Book 9 of the Iliad. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Iliad by Homer. Translated by Samuel Butler. Book 9. Recording by Michael Hellion. The Embassy to Achilles. Thus did the Trojans watch, but panic, comrade of blood-stained rout, had taken fast hold of the Achaeans, and their princes were all of them in despair. As when the two winds that blow from Thrace, the north and the northwest, spring up of a sudden and rouse the fury of the main, in a moment the dark waves uprear their heads and scatter their sea-wrack in all directions. Even thus troubled were the hearts of the Achaeans. The son of Atreus in dismay bade the heralds call the people to a council, man by man, but not to cry the matter aloud. He made haste also himself to call them, and they sat sorry at heart in their assembly. Agamemnon shed tears as it were a running stream or cataract on the side of some sheer cliff, and thus, with many a heavy sigh, he spoke to the Achaeans. "My friends," said he, "princes and counsellors of the Argives, the hand of heaven has been laid heavily upon me. Cruel Jove gave me his solemn promise that I should sack the city of Troy before returning, but he has played me false, and is now bidding me go ingloriously back to Argos with the loss of much people. Such is the will of Jove, who has laid many a proud city in the dust as he will yet lay others, for his power is above all. Now therefore let us all do as I say, and sail back to our own country, for we shall not take Troy." Thus he spoke, and the sons of the Achaeans for a long while sat sorrowful there, but they all held their peace. Till at last Diomed of the loud battle-cry made answer saying, "Son of Atreus, I will chide your folly, as is my right in council. Be not then aggrieved that I should do so. In the first place you attacked me before all the Danaans, and said I was a coward and no soldier. The Argives young and old know that you did so. But the son of scheming Saturn endowed you by halves only. He gave you honour as the chief ruler over us, but valour, which is the highest both right and might, he did not give you. Sir, think you that the sons of the Achaeans are indeed as unwarlike and cowardly as you say they are? If your own mind is set upon going home, go. The way is open to you. The many ships that followed you from Mycenae stand ranged upon the seashore, but the rest of us stay here till we have sacked Troy. Nay, though these too should turn homeward with their ships, Sthenelus and myself will still fight on till we reach the goal of Ilius, for heaven was with us when we came." The sons of the Achaeans shouted applause at the words of Diomed, and presently Nestor rose to speak. "Son of Tydeus," said he, "in war your prowess is beyond question, and in counsel you excel all who are of your own years. No one of the Achaeans can make light of what you say, nor gainsay it. But you have not yet come to the end of the whole matter. You are still young. You might be the youngest of my own children. Still, you have spoken wisely, and have counselled the chief of the Achaeans not without discretion. Nevertheless, I am older than you, and I will tell you everything. Therefore, let no man, not even King Agamemnon, disregard my saying, for he that foments civil discord is a clanless, hearthless outlaw. Now, however, let us obey the behests of night, and get our suppers, but let the sentinels, every man of them, camp by the trench that is without the wall. I am giving these instructions to the young men. When they have been attended to, do you, son of Atreus, give your orders, for you are the most royal among us all. Prepare a feast for your counsellors. It is right and reasonable that you should do so. There is abundance of wine in your tents, which the ships of the Achaeans bring from Thrace daily. You have everything at your disposal wherewith to entertain guests, and you have many subjects. When many are got together, you can be guided by him whose counsel is wisest, and sorely do we need shrewd and prudent counsel, for the foe has lit his watchfires hard by our ships. who can be other than dismayed? This night will either be the ruin of our host, or save it." Thus did he speak, and they did even as he had said. The sentinels went out in their armour under command of Nestor's son Thrasymedes, a captain of the host, and the bold warriors Ascalaphus and Ialmenus. There were also Meriones, Apharius, and Deipyrus, and the son of Creon, noble Lycomedes. There were 7 captains of the sentinels, and with each there went 100 youths armed with long spears. They took their places midway between the trench and the wall, and when they had done so, they lit their fires, and got every man his supper. The son of Atreus then bade many counsellors of the Achaeans to his quarters prepared in a great feast in their honour. They laid their hands on the good things that were before them, and as soon as they had had enough to eat and drink, old Nestor, whose counsel was ever truest, was the first to lay his mind before them. He, therefore, with all sincerity and good will, addressed them thus: "With yourself, most noble son of Atreus, king of men, Agamemnon, will I both begin my speech and end it, for you are king over much people. Jove, moreover, has vouchsafed you to wield the sceptre and to uphold righteousness, that you may take thought for your people under you. Therefore it behooves you above all others both to speak and to give ear, and to out the counsel of another who shall have been minded to speak wisely. All turns on you and on your commands. Therefore I will say what I think will be best. No man will be of a truer mind than that which has been mine from the hour when you, sir, angered Achilles by taking the girl Briseis from his tent against my judgment. I urged you not to do so, but you yielded to your own pride, and dishonoured a hero whom heaven itself had honoured. For you still hold the prize that had been awarded to him. Now, however, let us think how we may appease him, both with presents and fair speeches that may conciliate him." And King Agamemnon answered, "Sir, you have reproved my folly justly. I was wrong, I own it. One whom heaven befriends is in himself a host, and Jove has shown that he befriends this man by destroying much people of the Achaeans. I was blinded with passion, and yielded to my worser mind. Therefore I will make amends, and will give him great gifts by way of atonement. I will tell them in the presence of you all. I will give him 7 tripods that have never yet been on the fire, and 10 talents of gold. I will give him 20 iron cauldrons, and 12 strong horses that have won races and carried off prizes. Rich indeed, both in land and gold, is he that has as many prizes as my horses have won me. I will give him 7 excellent workwomen, Lesbians, whom I chose for myself when he took Lesbos, all of surpassing beauty. I will give him these, and with them her whom I erewhile took from him, the daughter of Briseus, and I swear a great oath, that I never went up into her couch, nor have been with her after the manner of men and women. All these things will I give him now, and if hereafter the gods vouchsafe me to sack the city of Priam, let him come when we Achaeans are dividing the spoil, and load his ship with gold and bronze to his liking. Furthermore, let him take 20 Trojan women, the loveliest after Helen herself. Then, when we reach Achaean Argos, wealthiest of all lands, he shall be my son-in-law, and I will show him like honour with my own dear son Orestes, who is being nurtured in all abundance. I have 3 daughters, Chrysothemis, Laodice, and Iphianassa. Let him take the one of his choice, freely and without gifts of wooing, to the house of Peleus. I will add such dower to boot as no man ever yet gave his daughter, and will give him 7 well-established cities, Cardamyle, Anope, and Here, where there is grass, holy Pherai and the rich meadows of Anthea, Epia also, and the vine-clad slopes of Pedasus, all near the sea, and on the borders of sandy Pylos. The men that dwell there are rich in cattle and sheep. They will honour him with gifts as though he were a god, and be obedient to his comfortable ordinances. All this will I do, if he will now forgo his anger. Let him then yield. It is only Hades who is utterly ruthless and unyielding, and hence he is of all gods the one most hateful to mankind. Moreover, I am older and more royal than himself. Therefore let him now obey me." Then Nestor answered, "Most noble son of Atreus, king of men Agamemnon, the gifts you offer are no small ones. Let us then send chosen messengers who will make go to the tent of Achilles, son of Peleus, without delay. Let those go whom I shall name. Let Phoenix, dear to Jove, lead the way. Let Ajax and Ulysses follow, and let the heralds Odius and Eurybates go with them. Now bring water for our hands, and bid all keep silence while we pray to Jove the son of Saturn, if so be that he may have mercy upon us." Thus did he speak, and his saying pleased them well. Men-servants poured water over the hands of the guests, while pages filled the mixing bowls with wine and water, and handed it round after giving every man his drink-offering. Then, when they had made their offerings, and had drunk each as much as he was minded, the envoy set out from the tent of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, and Nestor, looking first to one, and then to another, but most especially at Ulysses, was instant with them that they should prevail with the noble son of Peleus. They went their way by the shore of the sounding sea, and prayed earnestly to earth-encircling Neptune that the high spirit of the son of Aeacus might incline favourably towards them. When they reached the ships and tents of the Myrmidons, they found Achilles playing on a lyre, fair, of cunning workmanship, and its crossbar was of silver. It was part of the spoils which he had taken when he had sacked the city of Aetion, and he was now diverting himself with it, and singing the feats of heroes. He was alone with Patroclus, who sat opposite to him and said nothing, waiting till he should cease singing. Ulysses and Ajax now came in, Ulysses leading the way, and stood before him. Achilles sprang from his seat with the lyre still in hand, and Patroclus, when he saw the strangers, rose also. Achilles then greeted them, saying, "All hail and welcome! You must come upon some great matter, you, who for all my anger are still dearest to me of the Achaeans." With this he led them forward, and bade them sit on seats covered with purple rugs. Then he said to Patroclus, who was close by him, "Son of Menoetius, set a larger bowl upon the table, mix less water with the wine, and give every man his cup, for these are very dear friends, who are now under my roof." Patroclus did as his comrade bade him. He set the chopping block in front of the fire, and on it he laid the loin of a sheep, the loin also of a goat, and the chine of a fat hog. Automedon held the meat, while Achilles chopped it. He then sliced the pieces and put them on spits, while the son of Menoetius made the fire burn high. When the flame had died down, he spread the embers, laid the spits on top of them, lifting them up and setting them upon the spit racks, and he sprinkled them with salt. When the meat was roasted, he set it on platters, and handed bread round the table in fair baskets, while Achilles dealt them their portions. Then Achilles took his seat facing Ulysses against the opposite wall, and bade his comrade Patroclus offer sacrifice to the gods. So he cast the offerings into the fire, and they laid their hands upon the good things that were before them. As soon as they had had enough to eat and drink, Ajax made a sign to Phoenix, and when he saw this, Ulysses filled his cup with wine and pledged Achilles. "Hail," said he. "Achilles, we have had no scant of good cheer, neither in the tent of Agamemnon, nor yet here. There has been plenty to eat and drink, but our thoughts turn upon no such matter. Sir, we are in the face of great disaster, and without your help know not whether we shall save our fleet or lose it. The Trojans and their allies have camped hard by our ships and by the wall. They have lit watchfires throughout their host, and deem that nothing can now prevent them from falling on our fleet. Jove, moreover, has sent his lightning on their right. Hector in all his glory rages like a maniac. Confident that Jove is with him, he fears neither god nor man, but is gone raving mad, and prays for the approach of day. He vows that he will hew the high sterns of our ships in pieces, set fire to their hulls, and make havoc of the Achaeans while they are dazed and smothered in smoke. I much fear that heaven will make good his boasting, and it will prove our lot to perish at Troy far from our home in Argos. Up, then, and late though it be, save the sons of the Achaeans, who faint before the fury of the Trojans. You will repent bitterly hereafter if you do not, for when the harm is done, there will be no curing it. Consider ere it be too late, and save the Danaans from destruction. My good friend, when your father Peleus sent you from Phthia to Agamemnon, did he not charge you, saying, Son, Minerva and Juno will make you strong if they choose, but check your temper, for the better part is in good will. Eschew vain quarrelling, and the Achaeans old and young will respect you more for doing so. These were his words, but you have forgotten them. Even now, however, be appeased, and put away your anger from you. Agamemnon will make you great amends if you will forgive him. Listen, and I will tell you what he has said in his tent that he will give you. He will give you 7 tripods that have never yet been on the fire, and 10 talents of gold, 20 iron cauldrons, and 12 strong horses that have won races and carried off prizes. Rich indeed, both in land and gold, is he who has had as many prizes as these horses have won for Agamemnon. Moreover, he will give you 7 excellent workwomen, lesbians, whom he chose for himself when you took Lesbos, all of surpassing beauty. He will give you these, and with them her whom he erewhile took from you, the daughter of Briseus, and he will swear a great oath he has never gone up into her couch, nor been with her after the manner of men and women. All these things will he give you now down, and if hereafter the gods vouchsafe him to sack the city of Priam, you can come when we Achaeans are dividing the spoil, and load your ship with gold and bronze to your liking. You can take 20 Trojan women, the loveliest after Helen herself. Then, when we reach Achaean Argos, wealthiest of all lands, you shall be his son-in-law, and he will show you like honour with his own dear son Orestes, who is being nurtured in all abundance. Agamemnon has 3 daughters, Chrysothemis, Laodice, and Iphianassa. You may take the one of your choice, freely and without gifts of wooing, to the house of Peleus. He will add such dower to boot as no man ever yet gave his daughter, and will give you 7 well-established cities, Cardamele, Enope, and Here where there is grass, holy Phereus, and the rich meadows of Anthea, Epia also, and the vine-clad slopes of Pedasus, all near the sea and on the borders of sandy Pylos. The men that dwell there are rich in cattle and sheep. They will honour you with gifts as though you were a god, and be obedient to your comfortable ordinances. All this will he do if you will now forego your anger. Moreover, though you hate both him and his gifts with all your heart, yet pity the rest of the Achaeans, who are being harassed in all their host. They will honour you as a god, and you will earn great glory at their hands. You might even kill Hector. He will come within your reach, for he is infatuated, and declares that not a Danaan whom the ships have brought can hold his own against him. Achilles answered, Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, I should give you formal notice plainly, and in all fixity of purpose, that there be no more of this cajoling, from whatsoever quarter it may come. Him do I hate even as the gates of hell, who says one thing while he hides another in his heart. Therefore I will say what I mean. I will be appeased neither by Agamemnon son of Atreus, nor by any of the other Danaans, for I see that I have no thanks for all my fighting. He that fights fares no better than he that does not. Coward and hero are held in equal honour, and death deals like measure to him who works and to him who is idle. I have taken nothing by all my hardships, with my life ever in my hand, as a bird when she has found a morsel takes it to her nestlings, and herself fares hardly. Even so many a long night have I been wakeful, and many a bloody battle have I waged by day against those who are fighting for their women. With my ships I have taken 12 cities, and 11 round about Troy have I stormed with my men by land. I took great store of wealth from every one of them, but I gave all up to Agamemnon son of Atreus. He stayed where he was by his ships, yet of what came to him he gave little and kept much himself. Nevertheless, he did distribute some meeds of honour among the chieftains and kings, and these have them still. For me alone of the Achaeans did he take the woman in whom I delighted. Let him keep her and sleep with her. Why, pray, must the Argives needs fight the Trojans? What made the son of Atreus gather the host to bring them? Was it not for the sake of Helen? Are the sons of Atreus the only men in the world who love their wives? Any man of common right feeling will love and cherish her who is his own, as I this woman, with my whole heart, though she was but a fruitling of my spear. Agamemnon has taken her from me. He has played me false. I know him. Let him tempt me no further, for he shall not move me. Let him look to you, Ulysses, and the other princes to save his ships from burning. He has done much without me already. He has built a wall. He has dug a trench deep and wide all round it, and he has planted it with stakes. But even so he stays not the murderous might of Hector. So long as I fought the Achaeans, Hector suffered not the battle range far from the city walls. He would come to the Scaean gates and the oak tree, but no further. Once he stayed to meet me, and hardly did he escape my onset. Now, however, since I am in no mood to fight him, I will tomorrow offer sacrifice to Jove and to all the gods. I will draw my ships into the water, and then victual them duly. Tomorrow morning, if you care to look, you will see my ships on the Hellespont, and my men rowing out to sea with might and main. If great Neptune vouchsafes me a fair passage, in 3 days I shall be in Phthia. I have much there that I left behind me when I came here to my sorrow, and I shall bring back still further store of gold, of red copper, of fair women, and of iron, my share of the spoils that we have taken. But one prize, he who gave has insolently taken away. Tell him all as I now bid you, and tell him in public that the Achaeans may hate him, and beware of him, should he think that he can yet dupe others, for his effrontery never fails him. As for me, hound that he is, he dares not look me in the face. I will take no counsel with him, and I will undertake nothing in common with him. He has wronged me, and deceived me enough. He shall not cozen me further. Let him go his own way, for Jove has robbed him of his reason. I loathe his presence, and for himself care not one straw. He may offer me 10 or even 20 times what he has now done, nay, not though it be all that he has in the world, both now or ever shall have. He may promise me the wealth of Orchomenus, or of Egyptian Thebes, which is the richest city in the whole world, for it has 100 gates through each of which 200 men may drive at once with their chariots and horses. He may offer me gifts as the sands of the sea, or of the dust of the plain in multitude, but even so he shall not move me till I have been revenged in full for the bitter wrong he has done me. I will not marry his daughter. She may be fair as Venus, and skilful as Minerva, but I will have none of her. Let another take her, who may be a good match for her, and who rules a larger kingdom. If the gods spare me to return home, Peleus will find me a wife. There are Achaean women in Hellas and Phthia, daughters of kings that have cities under them. Of these I can take whom I will, and marry her. Many a time I was minded when at home in Phthia to woo and wed a woman who would make me a suitable wife, and to enjoy the riches of my old father Peleus. My life is more to me than all the wealth of Ilius, while it was yet at peace before the Achaeans went there, or than all the treasure that lies on the stone floor of Apollo's temple beneath the cliffs of Pytho. Cattle and sheep are to be had for harrying, and a man may buy both tripods and horses if he wants them, but when his life is once left him, it can neither be bought nor harried back again. My mother Thetis tells me that there are 2 ways in which I may meet my end. If I stay here and fight, I shall not return alive, but my name will live forever. Whereas if I go home, my name will die, but it will be long ere death shall take me. To the rest of you I say, go home, for you will not take Ilius. Jove has held his hand over her to protect her, and her people have taken heart. Go, therefore, as in duty bound, and tell the princes of the Achaeans the message that I have sent them. Tell them to find some other plan for the saving of their ships and people, for so long as my displeasure lasts, the one that they have now hit upon may not be. As for Phoenix, let him sleep here that he may sail with me in the morning if he so will, but I will not take him by force. They all held their peace, dismayed at the sternness with which he had denied them, till presently the old knight Phoenix, in his great fear of the ships of the Achaeans, burst into tears and said, "Noble Achilles, if you are now minded to return, and in the fierceness of your anger will do nothing to save the ships from burning, how, my son, can I remain here without you? Your father Peleus bade me to go with you when he sent you here as a mere lad from Phthia to Agamemnon. You knew nothing neither of war nor of the arts whereby men make their mark in council, and he sent me with you to train you in all excellence of speech and action. Therefore, my son, I will not stay here without you. No, not though heaven itself vouchsafe to strip my years from off me, and make me young as I was when I first left Hellas, the land of fair women. I was then flying the anger of Father Amintor, son of Ormenus, who was furious with me in the matter of his concubine. of whom he was enamoured to the wronging of his wife, my mother. My mother, therefore, prayed me without ceasing to lie with the woman myself, that so she hate my father, and in the course of time I yielded. But my father soon came to know, and cursed me bitterly, calling the dread Erinyes to witness. He prayed that no son of mine might ever sit upon knees, and the gods, Jove of the world below and awful Proserpine, fulfilled his curse. I took counsel to kill him, but some god stayed my rashness and bade me think on men's evil tongues and how I should be branded as the murderer of my father. Nevertheless I could not bear to stay in my father's house, with him so bitter against me. My cousins and my clansmen came about me, and pressed me sorely to remain. Many a sheep and many an ox did they slaughter, and many a fat hog did they set down to roast before the fire. Many a jar, too, did they broach of my father's wine. 9 whole nights did they set a guard over me, taking it in turns to watch, and they kept a fire always burning, both in the cloister of the outer court and in the inner court at the doors of the room where I lay. But when the darkness of the 10th night came, I broke through the closed doors of my room, and climbed the wall of the outer court after passing quickly and unperceived through the men on guard and the women servants. I then fled through Hellas, till I came to fertile Phthia, mother of sheep, and to King Peleus, who made me welcome, and treated me as a father treats an only son who will be heir to all his wealth. He made me rich, and set me over much people, establishing me on the borders of Phthia, where I was chief ruler over the Dolopians. It was I, Achilles, who had the making of you. I loved you with all my heart, for you would eat neither at home, nor when you had gone out elsewhere, till I had first set you upon my knees, cut up a dainty morsel that you were to eat, and held the wine-cup to your lips. Many a time have you slobbered your wine in baby helplessness over my shirt. I had infinite trouble with you. But I knew that heaven had vouchsafed me no offspring of my own, and I made a son of you, Achilles, that in my hour of need you might protect me. Now, therefore, I say battle with your pride and beat it. Cherish not your anger forever. The might and majesty of heaven are more than ours, but even heaven may be appeased. And if a man has sinned, he prays the gods, and reconciles them to himself by his piteous cries and by frankincense, with drink offerings and the savour of burnt sacrifice. For prayers are as daughters to great Jove. Halt, wrinkled, with eyes askance, they follow in the footsteps of sin, who being fierce and fleet of foot, leaves them far behind, and ever baneful to mankind outstrips them even to the ends of the world. But nevertheless the prayers come hobbling and healing after. If a man has pity upon these daughters of Jove when they draw near him, they will bless him and hear him too when he is praying. But if he deny them, and will not listen to them, they go to Jove, the son of Saturn, and pray that he may presently fall into sin, to his ruing bitterly hereafter. Therefore, Achilles, give these daughters of Jove due reverence, and bow before them as all good men will bow. Were not the son of Atreus offering you gifts and promising others later, if he were still furious and implacable, I am not he that would bid you throw off your anger and help the Achaeans, no matter how great their need. But he is giving much now, and more hereafter. He has sent his captains to urge his suit, and he has chosen those who of all the Argives are most acceptable to you. Make not then their words and their coming to be of none effect. Your anger has been righteous so far. We have heard in song how heroes of old time quarrelled when they were aroused to fury, but they could still be won by gifts, and fair words could soothe them. I have an old story in my mind, a very old one, but you are all friends, and I will tell us. The Curetes and the Aetolians were fighting and killing one another round Calydon, the Aetolians defending the city, and the Curetes trying to destroy it. For Diana of the golden throne was angry and did them hurt, because Oeneus had not offered her his harvest firstfruits. The other gods had all been feasted with hecatombs, but to the daughter of great Jove alone he had made no sacrifice. He had forgotten her, or somehow or other it had escaped him, and this was a grievous sin. Thereon the archer goddess in her displeasure sent a prodigious creature against him, a savage wild boar with great white tusks, that did much harm to his orchard lands, uprooting apple trees in full bloom and throwing them to the ground. But Meleager son of Oeneus got huntsmen and hounds from many cities and killed it, For it was so monstrous that not a few were needed, and many a man did it stretch upon his funeral pyre. On this the goddess set the Curetes and the Aetolians fighting furiously about the head and skin of the boar. So long as Meleager was in the field, things went badly for the Curetes, and for all their numbers they could not hold their ground under the city walls. But in the course of time Meleager was angered as even a wise man will sometimes be. He was incensed with his mother Althea, and therefore stayed at home with his wedded wife, fair Cleopatra, who was daughter of Marpessa, daughter of Euneus, and of Ides, the man then living. He it was who took his bow and faced King Apollo himself, for fair Marpessa's sake. Her father and mother then named her Alcyone, because her mother had mourned with the plaintive strains of the halcyon bird, when Phoebus Apollo had carried her off. Meleager then stayed at home with Cleopatra, nursing the anger which he felt by reason of his mother's curses. His mother, grieving for the death of her brother, prayed the gods and beat the earth with her hands, calling upon Hades and on awful Proserpine. She went down upon her knees, and her bosom was wet with tears as she prayed that they would kill her son. And Erinyes, that walks the darkness and knows no ruth, heard her from Erebus. Then there was the din of battle about the gates of Calydon, and the dull thump of the battering against their walls. Thereon the elders of the Aetolians besought Meleager. They sent the chiefest of their priests, and begged him to come out and help them, promising him a great reward. They bade him choose 50 plough-gates, the most fertile in the plain of Calydon, the one half vineyard, the other open plough-land. The old warrior Oeneus implored him, standing at the threshold of his room, and beating the doors in supplication. His sisters and his mother herself besought him sore, but he the more refused them. Those of his comrades who were nearest and dearest to him also prayed him, but they could not move him till the foe was battering at the very doors of his chamber, and the Curetes had scaled the walls and were setting fire to the city. Then at last his sorrowing wife detailed the horrors that befall those whose city is taken. She reminded him how the men are slain, and the city is given over to the flames, while the women and children are carried into captivity. When he heard all this, his heart was touched, and he donned his armour to go forth. Thus of his own inward motion he saved the city of the Aetolians. But they now gave him nothing of those rich rewards that they had offered earlier, and though he saved the city, he took nothing by it. Be not then, my son, thus minded. Let not heaven lure you into any such course. When the ships are burning, it will be a harder matter to save them. Take the gifts and go, for the Achaeans will then honour you as a god, whereas if you fight without taking them, you may beat the battle back, but you will not be held in like honour. And Achilles answered, Phoenix, old friend and father, I have no need of such honour. I have honour from Jove himself, which will abide with me at my ships while I have breath in my body, and my limbs are strong. I say further, and lay my saying to your heart, vex me no more with this weeping and lamentation, all in the cause of the son of Atreus. Love him so well, and you may lose the love I bear you. You ought to help me rather in troubling those that trouble me. Be king as much as I am, and share like honour with myself. The others shall take my answer. Stay here yourself, and sleep comfortably in your bed. At daybreak we will consider whether to remain or go. On this he nodded quietly to Patroclus, as a sign that he was to prepare a bed for Phoenix, and that the others should take their leave. Ajax, son of Telamon, then said, Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, let us be gone, for I see that our journey is vain. We must now take our answer, unwelcome though it be, to the Danaans who are waiting to receive it. Achilles is savage and remorseless. He is cruel, and cares nothing for the love his comrades lavished upon him more than on all the others. He is implacable. And yet if a man's brother or son has been slain, he will accept a fine by way of amends from him that killed him, and the wrongdoer having paid in full remains in peace among his own people. But as for you, Achilles, the gods have put a wicked unforgiving spirit in your heart, and this, all about one single girl, whereas we now offer you the 7 best we have, and much else into the bargain. Be then of a more gracious mind, respect the hospitality of your own roof. We are with you as messengers from the host of the Danaans, and would fain be held nearest and dearest to yourself of all the Achaeans. Ajax, replied Achilles, noble son of Telamon, you have spoken much to my liking, but my blood boils when I think it all over, and remember how the son of Atreus treated me with contumely as though I were some vile tramp, and that too in the presence of the Argives. Go, then, and deliver your message. Say that I will have no concern with fighting till Hector, son of noble Priam, reaches the tents of the Myrmidons in his murderous course, and flings fire upon their ships. For all his lust of battle, I take it he will be held in check when he is at my own tent and ship." On this they took every man his double cup, made their drink offerings, and went back to the ships, Ulysses leading the way. But Patroclus told his men and the maidservants to make ready a comfortable bed for Phoenix. They therefore did so with sheepskins, a rug, and a sheet of fine linen. The old man then laid himself down and waited till morning came. But Achilles slept in an inner room, and beside him the daughter of Phorbas, lovely Diomede, whom he had carried off from Lesbos. Patroclus lay on the other side of the room, and with him fair Iphis, whom Achilles had given him when he took Scyros, the city of Aeneus. When the envoys reached the tents of the son of Atreus, the Achaeans rose, pledged them in cups of gold, and began to question them. King Agamemnon was the first to do so. "Tell me, Ulysses," said he, "will he save the ships from burning, or did he refuse, and is he still furious?" Ulysses answered, "Most noble son of Atreus, king of men, Agamemnon, Achilles will not be calmed, but is more fiercely angry than ever, and spurns both you and your gifts. He bids you take counsel with the Achaeans to save the ships and host as you best may. As for himself, he said that at daybreak he should draw his ships into the water. He said further that he should advise every one of them to sail home likewise, for that you will not reach the goal of Ilius. Jove, he said, has laid his hand over the city to protect it, and the people have taken heart. This is what he said, and the others who were with me can tell you the same story, Ajax and the 2 heralds, men, both of them, who may be trusted. The old man Phoenix stayed where he was to sleep, for so Achilles would have it, that he might go home with him in the morning, if he so would, but he will not take him by force." They all held their peace, sitting for a long time silent and dejected, by reason of the sternness with which Achilles had refused them, till presently Diomede said, "Most noble son of Atreus, king of men, Agamemnon, you ought not to have sued the son of Peleus, nor offered him gifts. He is proud enough as it is, and you have encouraged him in his pride still further. Let him stay or go as he will. He will fight later when he is in the humour, and heaven puts it in his mind to do so. Now, therefore, let us all do as I say. We have eaten and drunk our fill. Let us then take our rest, for in rest there is both strength and stay. But when fair, rosy-fingered morn appears, forthwith bring out your host and your horsemen in front of the ships, urging them on, and yourself fighting among the foremost." Thus he spoke, and the other chieftains approved his words. They then made their drink offerings, and went every man to his own tent, where they laid down to rest, and enjoyed the boon of sleep. End of Book 9.
Book 10 of the Iliad. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Anna Simon. The Iliad, by Homer. Translated by Samuel Butler. Book 10. Ulysses and Diomede go out as spies and meet Dolon, who gives them information. They then kill him, and profiting by what he had told them, kill Rhesus, king of the Thracians, and take his horses. Now the other princes of the Achaeans slept soundly the whole night through, but Agamemnon, son of Atreus, was troubled, so that he could get no rest. As when fair Juno's lord flashes his lightning in token of great rain or hail, or snow when the snowflakes whiten the ground, or again as a sign that he will open the wide jaws of hungry war, even so did Agamemnon heave many a heavy sigh, for his soul trembled within him. When he looked upon the plain of Troy, he marvelled at the many watchfires burning in front of Ilius. and at the sound of pipes and flutes and of the hum of men, but when presently he turned towards the ships and hosts of the Achaeans, he tore his hair by handfuls before Jove on high, and groaned aloud for the very disquietness of his soul. In the end he deemed it best to go at once to Nestor son of Neleus, and see if between them they could find any way of the Achaeans from destruction. He therefore rose, put on his shirt, bound his sandals about his comely feet, flung the skin of a huge tawny lion over his shoulders, a skin that reached his feet, and took his spear in his hand. Neither could Menelaus sleep, for he too boded ill for the Argives who for his sake had sailed from far over the seas to fight the Trojans. He covered his broad back with the skin of a spotted panther, put a casque of bronze upon his head, and took his spear in his brawny hand. Then he went to rouse his brother, who was by far the most powerful of the Achaeans, and was honoured by the people as though he were a god. He found him by the stern of his ship, already putting his goodly array about his shoulders, and right glad was he that his brother had come. Menelaus spoke first. "Why," said he, "my dear brother, are you thus arming? Are you going to send any of our comrades to exploit the Trojans? I greatly fear that no one will do you this service and spy upon the enemy alone in the dead of night. It will be a deed of great daring." And King Agamemnon answered, "Menelaus, we both of us need shrewd counsel to save the Argives and our ships, for Jove has changed his mind and inclines towards Hector's sacrifices rather than ours. I never saw nor heard tell of any man as having wrought such ruin in one day as Hector has now wrought against the sons of the Achaeans, and that too of his own unaided self, for he is son neither to god nor goddess. The Argives will rue it long and deeply. Run therefore with all speed by the line of the ships and call Ajax and Idomeneus. Meanwhile I will go to Nestor and bid him rise and go about among the companies of our sentinels to give them their instructions. They will listen to him sooner than to any man, for his own son and Meriones, brother-in-arms to Idomeneus, are captains over them. It was to them more particularly that we gave this charge." Menelaus replied, "How do I take your meaning? Am I to stay with them and wait your coming, or shall I return here as soon as I have given your orders?" "Wait," answered King Agamemnon, "for there are so many paths about the camp that we might miss one another. Call every man on your way, and bid him be stirring. Name him by his lineage and by his father's name. Give each all titular observance, and stand not too much upon your own dignity. We must take our full share of toil, for at our birth Jove laid this heavy burden upon us." With these instructions he sent his brother on his way, and went on to Nestor shepherd of his people. He found him sleeping in his tent hard by his own ship. His goodly armour lay beside him, his shield, his 2 spears and his helmet. Beside him also lay the gleaming girdle with which the old man girded himself when he armed to lead his people into battle, for his age stayed him not. He raised himself on his elbow and looked up at Agamemnon. "Who is it," said he, "that goes thus about the host and the ships alone and in the dead of night, when men are sleeping? Are you looking for one of your mules, or for some comrade? Do not stand there and say nothing, but speak. What is your business?" And Agamemnon answered, "Nestor, son of Neleus, honour to the Achaean name, it is I, Agamemnon son of Atreus, on whom Jove has laid labour and sorrow so long as there is breath in my body and my limbs carry me. I am thus abroad because sleep sits not upon my eyelids, but my heart is big with war and with the jeopardy of the Achaeans. I am in great fear for the Danaans. I am at sea, and without sure counsel. My heart beats as though it would leap out of my body, and my limbs fail me. If then you can do anything, for you too cannot sleep, let us go the round of the watch, and see whether they are drowsy with toil and sleeping to the neglect of their duty. The enemy is encamped hard, and we know not but he may attack us by night." Nestor replied, "Most noble son of Atreus, king of men, Agamemnon, Jove will not do all for Hector that Hector thinks he will. He will have troubles yet in plenty, if Achilles will lay aside his anger. I will go with you and will rouse others." either the son of Tydeus, or Ulysses, or fleet Ajax and the valiant son of Phyleus. Some one had also better go and call Ajax and King Idomeneus, for their ships are not near at hand, but the farthest of all. I cannot, however, refrain from blaming Menelaus, much as I love him and respect him, and I will say so plainly, even at the risk of offending you, for sleeping and leaving all this trouble to yourself. He ought to be going about imploring aid from all the princes of the Achaeans, for we are in extreme danger." And Agamemnon answered, "Sir, you may sometimes blame him justly, for he is often remiss and unwilling to exert himself; not indeed from sloth, nor yet heedlessness, but because he looks to me and expects me to take the lead. On this occasion, however, he was awake before I was, and came to me of his own accord. I have already sent him to call the very man whom you have named. And now let us be going. We shall find them with the watch outside the gates, for it was there I said that we would meet him." "In that case," answered Nestor, "the Argives will not blame him nor disobey his orders when he urges them to fight or gives them instructions." With this he put on his shirt and bound his sandals about his comely feet. He buckled on his purple coat, of two thicknesses, large, and of a rough, shaggy texture, grasped his redoubtable bronze-shod spear, and wended his way along the line of the Achaean ships. First he called loudly to Ulysses peer of gods in council, and woke him, for he was soon roused by the sound of the battle-cry. He came outside his tent, and said, "Why do you go thus alone about the host, and along the line of the ships, in the stillness of the night? What is it that you find so urgent?" And Nestor, knight of Gerene, answered, "Ulysses, noble son of Laertes, take it not amiss, for the Achaeans are in great straits. Come with me, and let us wake some other, who may advise well with us whether we shall fight or fly." On this Ulysses went at once into his tent, put his shield about his shoulders, and came out with them. First they went to Diomed son of Tydeus, and found him outside his tent clad in his armour, with his comrades sleeping round him and using their shields as pillows. As for their spears, they stood upright on the spikes of their butts that were driven into the ground, and the burnished bronze flashed afar like the lightning of Father Jove. The hero was sleeping upon the skin of an ox, with a piece of fine carpet under his head. Nestor went up to him and stirred him with his heel to rouse him, upbraiding him and urging him to bestir himself. "Wake up," he exclaimed, "son of Tydeus, how can you sleep on in this way? Can you not see that the Trojans are encamped on the brow of the plain hard by our ships, with but a little space between us and them?" On these words Diomed leapt up instantly and said, "Old man, your heart is of iron, you rest not one moment from your labours. Are there no younger men among the Achaeans who could go about to rouse the princes? There is no tiring you." And Nestor, knight of Gerene, made answer, "My son, all that you have said is true. I have good sons, and also much people whom I call the chieftains, but the Achaeans are in the gravest danger. Life and death are balanced as it were on the edge of a razor. Go then, for you are younger than I, and of your courtesy rouse Ajax and the fleet son of Phyleus." Diomed threw the skin of a great tawny lion about his shoulders, a skin that reached his feet, and grasped his spear. When he had roused the heroes, he brought them back with him. They then went the round of those who were on guard, and found the captains not sleeping at their posts, but wakeful and sitting with their arms about them. As sheepdogs that watch their flocks when they are yarded, and hear a wild beast coming through the mountain forest towards them, forthwith there is a hue and cry of dogs and men and slumber is broken, even so was sleep chased from the eyes of the Achaeans as they kept the watches of the wicked night, for they turned constantly towards the plain whenever they heard any stir among the Trojans. The old man was glad, bade them be of good cheer. "Watch on, my children," said he, "and let not sleep get hold upon you, lest our enemies triumph over us." With this he passed the trench, and with him the other chiefs of the Achaeans who had been called to the council. Meriones and the brave son of Nestor went also, for the princes bade them. When they were beyond the trench that was dug round the wall, they held their meeting on the open ground where there was a space clear of corpses, for it was here that when night fell Hector had turned back from his onslaught on the Argives. They sat down therefore and held debate with one another. Nestor spoke first. "My friends," said he, "is there any man bold enough to venture the Trojans and cut off some straggler, or bring us news of what the enemy mean to do, whether they will stay here by the ships away from the city, or whether, now that they have worsted the Achaeans, they will retire within their walls? If he could learn all this and come back safely here, his fame would be high as heaven in the mouths of all men, and he would be rewarded richly, for the chiefs from all our ships would each of them give him a black ewe with her lamb, which is a present of surpassing value, and he would be asked as a guest to all feasts and clan gatherings." They all held their peace, but Diomed of the loud war-cry spoke, saying, "Nestor, gladly will I visit the host of the Trojans over against us, but if another will go with me I shall do so in greater confidence and comfort. When two men are together, one of them may see some opportunity which the other has not caught sight of. If a man is alone he is less full of resource and his wit is weaker." On this several offered to go with Diomed. The two Ajaxes, servants of Mars, Meriones, and the son of Nestor all wanted to go, so did Menelaus son of Atreus. Ulysses also wished to go among the host of the Trojans, for he was ever full of daring, and thereon Agamemnon king of men spoke thus: "Diomed," said he, "son of Tydeus, man after my own heart, choose your comrade for yourself, take the best man of those that have offered, for many would now go with you. Do not through delicacy reject the better man and take the worst out of respect for his lineage because he is of more royal blood." He said this because he feared for Menelaus. Diomed answered, "If you bid me take the man of my own choice, how in that case can I fail to think of Ulysses, than whom there is no man more eager to face all kinds of danger, and Pallas Minerva loves him well. If he were to go with me we should pass safely through fire itself, for he is quick to see and understand." "Son of Tydeus," replied Ulysses, "say neither good nor ill about me, for you are among Argives who know me well. Let us be going, for the night wanes and dawn is at hand. The stars have gone forwards, 2/3 of the night are already spent, and a third is alone left us." They then put on their armour. Brave Thrasymedes provided the son of Tydeus with a sword and a shield, for he had left his own at his ship, and on his head he set a helmet of bull's hide without either peak or crest. It is called a skull cap, and is a common headgear. Meriones found a bow and quiver for Ulysses, and on his head he set a leathern helmet that was lined with a strong plating of leathern thongs, while on the outside it was thickly studded with boar's teeth, well and skilfully set into it. Next the head there was an inner lining of felt. This helmet had been stolen by Autolycus out of Ilion, when he broke into the house of Amyntor son of Ormenus. He gave it to Amphidamas of Cythera to take to Scandia, and Amphidamas gave it as a guest gift to Molus, who gave it to his son Meriones, and now it was set upon the head of Ulysses. When the pair had armed they set out, and left the other chieftains behind them. Pallas Minerva sent them a heron by the wayside upon their right hands. They could not see it for the darkness, but they heard its cry. Ulysses was glad when he heard it and prayed to Minerva. "Hear me," he cried, "daughter of aegis-bearing Jove, you who spy out all my ways and who are with me in all my hardships. Befriend me in this mine hour, and grant that we may return to the ships covered with glory after having achieved some mighty exploit that shall bring sorrow to the Trojans." Then Diomed of the loud war-cry also prayed. "Hear me too," said he, "daughter of Jove, unweariable. Be with me even as you were with my noble father Tydeus when he went to Thebes as envoy sent by the Achaeans. He left the Achaeans by the banks of the river Aesopus and went to the city bearing a message of peace to the Cadmeans. On his return thence, with your help, goddess, he did great deeds of daring, for you were his ready helper. Even so guide me and guard me now, and in return I will offer you in sacrifice a broad-browed heifer of a year old, unbroken, and never yet brought by man under the yoke. I will gild her horns and will offer her up to you in sacrifice." Thus they prayed, and Pallas Minerva heard their prayer. When they had done praying to the daughter of great Jove, they went their way like two lions prowling by night amid the armour and blood-stained bodies of them that had fallen. Neither again did Hector let the Trojans sleep, for he too called the princes and counsellors of the Trojans that he might set his counsel before them. "Is there one," said he, "who for a great reward will do me the service of which I will tell you? He shall be well paid if he will. I will give him a chariot and a couple of horses, the fleetest that can be found of the ships of the Achaeans, if he will dare this thing, and he will win infinite honour to boot. He must go to the ships and find out whether they are still guarded as heretofore, or whether now that we have beaten them the Achaeans design to fly, and through sheer exhaustion are neglecting to keep their watches." They all held their peace, but there was among the Trojans a certain man named Dolon, son of Eumedes, the famous herald, a man rich in gold and bronze. He was ill-favoured, but a good runner, and was an only son among 5 sisters. He it was that now addressed the Trojans. "I, Hector," said he, "will to the ships and will exploit them. But first hold up your sceptre and swear that you will give me the chariot, bedight with bronze, and the horses that now carry the noble son of Peleus. I will make you a good scout, and will not fail you. I will go through the host from one end to the other till I come to the ship of Agamemnon, where I take it the princes of the Achaeans are now consulting whether they shall fight or fly." When he had done speaking, Hector held up his sceptre and swore him his oath, saying, "May Jove the thundering husband of Juno bear witness that no other Trojan but yourself shall mount those steeds, and that you shall have your will with them for ever." The oath he swore was bootless, but it made Dolon more keen on going. He hung his bow over his shoulder, and as an overall he wore the skin of a grey wolf, while on his head he set a cap of ferret skin. Then he took a pointed javelin and left the camp for the ships. But he was not to return with any news for Hector. When he had left the horses and the troops behind him, he made all speed on his way, but Ulysses perceived his coming and said to Diomed, "Diomed, here is some one from the camp. I am not sure whether he is a spy, or whether it is some thief who would plunder the bodies of the dead. Let him get a little past us; we can then spring upon him and take him. If, however, he is too quick for us, go after him with your spear and hem him in towards the ships away from the Trojan camp, to prevent his getting back to the town." With this they turned out of their way and lay down among the corpses. Dolon suspected nothing and soon passed them, but when he had got about as far as the distance by which a mule-ploughed furrow exceeds one that has been ploughed by oxen, for mules can plough fallow land quicker than oxen, they ran after him, and when he heard their footsteps he stood still, for he made sure they were friends from the Trojan camp come by Hector's orders to bid him return. When, however, they were only a spear's cast or less away from him, he saw that they were enemies and ran away as fast as his legs could take him. The others gave chase at once, and as a couple of well-trained hounds press forward after a doe or hare that runs screaming in front of them, even so did the son of Tydeus and Ulysses pursue Dolon and cut him off from his own people. But when he had fled so far towards the ships that he would soon have fallen in with the outposts, Minerva infused fresh strength into the son of Tydeus, for fear some other of the Achaeans might have the glory of being first to hit him, and he might himself be only second. He therefore sprang forward with his spear and said, "Stand, or I shall throw my spear, and in that case I shall soon make an end of you." He threw as he spoke, but missed his aim on purpose. The dart flew over the man's right shoulder and then stuck in the ground. He stood stock still, trembling and in great fear. His teeth chattered, and he turned pale with fear. The two came breathless up to him and seized his hands, whereon he began to weep and said, "Take me alive, I will ransom myself. We have great store of gold, bronze, and wrought iron, and from this my father will satisfy you with a very large ransom, should he hear of my being alive at the ships of the Achaeans." "Fear not," replied Ulysses, "let no thought of death be in your mind, But tell me, and tell me true, why are you thus going about alone in the dead of night, away from your camp and towards the ships, while other men are sleeping? Is it to plunder the bodies of the slain, or did Hector send you to spy out what was going on at the ships? Or did you come here of your own mere notion?" Dolon answered, his limbs trembling beneath him, "Hector, with his vain flattering promises, lured me from my better judgment. He said he would give me the horses of the noble son of Peleus and his bronze bedizened chariot. He bade me go through the darkness of the flying night, get close to the enemy, and find out whether the ships are still guarded as heretofore, or whether, now that we have beaten them, the Achaeans design to fly, and through sheer exhaustion are neglecting to keep their watches." Ulysses smiled at him and answered, "You had indeed set your heart upon a great reward, but the horses of the descendant of Aeacus are hardly to be kept in hand or driven by any other mortal man than Achilles himself, whose mother was an immortal. But tell me, and tell me true, where did you leave Hector when you started? Where lies his armour and his horses? How too are the watches and sleeping ground of the Trojans ordered? What are their plans? Will they stay here by the ships and away from the city, or now that they have worsted the Achaeans will they retire within their walls?" And Dolon answered, "I will tell you truly all. Hector and the other councillors are now holding conference by the monument of great Ilus, away from the general tumult. As for the guards about which you ask me, there is no chosen watch to keep guard over the host. The Trojans have their watchfires, for they are bound to have them. They therefore are awake, and keep each other to their duty as sentinels, but the allies who have come from other places are asleep, and leave it to the Trojans to keep guard, for their wives and children are not here." Ulysses then said, "Now tell me, are they sleeping among the Trojan troops, or do they lie apart? Explain this that I may understand it." "I will tell you truly all," replied Dolon. "To the seaward lie the Carians, the Paeonian bowmen, the Leleges, the Cauconians, and the noble Pelasgi. The Lycians and proud Mysians, with the Phrygians and Meonians, have their place on the side towards Thymbra. But why ask about all this? If you want to find your way into the host of the Trojans, there are the Thracians, who have lately come here and lie apart from the others at the far end of the camp, and they have Rhesus son of Ioneus for their king. His horses are the finest and strongest that I have ever seen. They are whiter than snow and fleeter than any wind that blows. His chariot is bedight with silver and gold, and he has brought his marvellous golden armour of the rarest workmanship, too splendid for any mortal man to carry, and meet only for the gods. Now therefore take me to the ships, or bind me securely here until you come back and have proved my words, whether they be false or true." Diomed looked sternly at him and answered, "Think not, Dolon, for all the good information you have given us, that you shall escape now you are in our hands, for if we ransom you or let you go, you will come some second time to the ships of the Achaeans either as a spy or as an open enemy, but if I kill you and make an end of you, you will give no more trouble." On this Dolon would have caught him by the beard to beseech him further, but Diomed struck him in the middle of his neck with his sword, and cut through both sinews so that his head fell rolling in the dust while he was yet speaking. They took the ferret skin cap from his head, and also the wolf skin, the bow, and his long spear. Ulysses hung them up aloft in honour of Minerva the goddess of plunder, and prayed, saying, "Accept these, goddess, for we give them to you in preference to all the gods in Olympus. Therefore speed us still further towards the horses and sleeping ground of the Thracians." With these words he took the spoils and set them upon a tamarisk tree, and they marked the place by pulling up reeds and gathering boughs of tamarisk, that they might not miss it as they came back through the flying hours of darkness. The two then went onwards amid the fallen armour and the blood, and came presently to the company of Thracian soldiers, who were sleeping, tired out with their day's toil. Their goodly armour was lying on the ground beside them all orderly in 3 rows, and each man had his yoke of horses beside him. Rhesus was sleeping in the middle, and hard by him his horses were made fast to the topmost rim of his chariot. Ulysses from some way off saw him and said, "This, Diomed, is the man, and these are the horses about which Dolon, whom we killed, told us. do your very utmost, dally not about your armour, but loose the horses at once, or else kill the men yourself, while I see to the horses." Thereon Minerva put courage into the heart of Diomed, and he smote them right and left. They made a hideous groaning as they were being hacked about, and the earth was red with their blood. As a lion springs furiously upon a flock of sheep or goats when he finds them without their shepherd, so did the son of Tydeus set upon the Thracian soldiers till he had killed 12. As he killed them, Ulysses came and drew them aside by their feet one by one, that the horses might go forward freely without being frightened as they passed over the dead bodies, for they were not yet used to them. When the son of Tydeus came to the king he killed him too, which made 13, as he was breathing hard, for by the counsel of Minerva an evil dream, the seed of Oeneus, hovered that night over his head. Meanwhile Ulysses untied the horses, made them fast one to another and drove them off, striking them with his bow, for he had forgotten to take the whip from the chariot. Then he whistled as a sign to Diomed. But Diomed stayed where he was, thinking what other daring deed he might accomplish. He was doubting whether to take the chariot in which the king's armour was lying and draw it out by the pole, or to lift the armour out and carry it off, or whether again he should not kill some more Thracians. While he was thus hesitating, Minerva came up to him and said, "Get back, Diomed, to the ships, or you may be driven thither, should some other god rouse the Trojans." Diomed knew that it was the goddess, and at once sprang upon the horses. Ulysses beat them with his bow, and they fled onward to the ships of the Achaeans. But Apollo kept no blind lookout when he saw Minerva with the son of Tydeus. He was angry with her, and coming to the host of the Trojans, he roused Hippocon, a counsellor of the Thracians and a noble kinsman of Rhesus. He started up out of his sleep and saw that the horses were no longer in their place, and that the men were gasping in their death agony. On this he groaned aloud and called upon his friend by name. Then the whole Trojan camp was in an uproar as the people kept hurrying together, and they marvelled at the deeds of the heroes who had now got away towards the ships. When they reached the place where they had killed Hector's scout, Ulysses stayed his horses, and the son of Tydeus, leaping to the ground, placed the blood-stained spoils in the hands of Ulysses and remounted. Then he lashed the horses onwards, and they flew forward nothing loth towards the ships, as though of their own free will. Nestor was first to hear the tramp of their feet. "My friends," said he, "princes and counsellors of the Argives, shall I guess right or wrong? But I must say what I think. There is a sound in my ears as of the tramp of horses. I hope it may be Diomed and Ulysses driving in horses from the Trojans, but I much fear that the bravest of the Argives may have come to some harm at their hands." He had hardly done speaking when the two men came in and dismounted, whereon the others shook hands right gladly with them and congratulated them. Nestor, knight of Gerene, was first to question them. "Tell me," said he, "renowned Ulysses, how did you two come by these horses? Did you steal in among the Trojan forces, or did some god meet you and give them to you? They are like sunbeams. I am well conversant with the Trojans, for old warrior though I am, I never hold back by the ships, but I never yet saw or heard of such horses as these are. Surely some god must have met you and given them to you, for you are both of you dear to Jove and to Jove's daughter Minerva." And Ulysses answered, "Nestor, son of Neleus, honour to the Achaean name, heaven, if it so will, can give us even better horses than these, for the gods are far mightier than we are. These horses, however, about which you ask me, are freshly come from Thrace. Diomed killed their king with the 12 bravest of his companions. Hard by the ships we took a 13th man, a scout whom Hector and the other Trojans had sent as a spy upon our ships." He laughed as he spoke, and drove the horses over the ditch, while the other Achaeans followed him gladly. When they reached the strongly built quarters of the son of Tydeus, they tied the horses with thongs of leather to the manger, where the steeds of Diomed stood eating their sweet corn, but Ulysses hung the blood-stained spoils of Dolon at the stern of his ship, that they might prepare a sacred offering to Minerva. As for themselves, they went into the sea and washed the sweat from their bodies and from their necks and thighs. When the sea water had taken all the sweat from off them and had refreshed them, they went into the baths and washed themselves. After they had done so and had anointed themselves with oil, they sat down to table, and drawing from a full mixing bowl, made a drink offering of wine to Minerva. End of Book 10.
Book 11 of the Iliad. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Iliad by Homer. Translated by Samuel Butler. Book 11. In the forenoon the fight is equal, but Agamemnon turns of the day towards the Achaeans until he gets wounded and leaves the field. Hector then drives everything before him till he is wounded by Diomed. Paris wounds Diomed. Ulysses, Nestor, and Idomeneus perform prodigies of valour. Lycaon is wounded. Nestor drives him off in his chariot. Achilles sees the pair driving towards the camp and sends Patroclus to ask who it is that is wounded. This is the beginning of evil for Patroclus. Nestor makes a long speech. And now, as dawn rose from her couch beside Tithonus, harbinger of light alike to mortals and immortals, Jove sent fierce discord with the ensign of war in her hands to the ships of the Achaeans. She took her stand by the huge black hull of Ulysses' ship, which was middlemost of all, so that her voice might carry farthest on either side, on the one hand towards the tents of Ajax son of Telamon, and on the other towards those of Achilles, for these two heroes, well assured of their own strength, had valorously drawn up their ships at the two ends of the line. There she took her stand, and raised a cry both loud and shrill, that filled the Achaeans with courage, giving them heart to fight resolutely and with all their might, so that they had rather stay there and do battle than go home in their ships. The son of Atreus shouted aloud and bade the Argives gird themselves for battle, while he put on his armour. First he girded his goodly greaves about his legs, making them fast with ankle clasps of silver. First he girded his goodly greaves about his legs, making them fast with ankle clasps of silver, and about his chest he set the breastplate which Cinyras had once given him as a guest gift. It had been noised abroad as far as Cyprus that the Achaeans were about to sail for Troy, and therefore he gave it to the king. It had 10 courses of dark cyanus, 12 of gold, and 10 of tin. There were serpents of cyanus that reared themselves up towards the neck, 3 upon either side, like the rainbows which the son of Saturn has set in heaven as a sign to mortal men. About his shoulders he threw his sword, studded with bosses of gold, and the scabbard was of silver, with a chain of gold wherewith to hang it. He took moreover the richly dight shield that covered his body when he was in battle, fair to see, with 10 circles of bronze running all round it. On the body of the shield there were 20 bosses of white tin, with another of dark cyanus in the middle. This last was made to show a Gorgon's head, fierce and grim, with rout and panic on either side. The band for the arm to go through was of silver, on which there was a writhing snake of cyanus with 3 heads that sprang from a single neck, and went in and out among one another. On his head Agamemnon set a helmet, with a peak before and behind, and 4 plumes of horsehair that nodded it menacingly above it. Then he grasped 2 redoubtable bronze-shod spears, and the gleam of his armour shot from him as a flame into the firmament, while Juno and Minerva thundered in honour of the king of rich Mycenae. Every man now left his horses in charge of his charioteer, to hold them in readiness by the trench, while he went into battle on foot clad in full armour, and a mighty uproar rose on high unto the dawning. The chiefs were armed and at the trench before the horses got there, but these came up presently. The son of Saturn sent a portent of evil sound about their host, and the dew fell red with blood, for he was about to send many a brave man hurrying down to Hades. The Trojans, on the other side upon the rising slope of the plain, were gathered round great Hector, noble Polydamas, Aeneas, who was honoured by the Trojans like an immortal, and the 3 sons of Antenor, Polybus, Agenor, and young Acamas, beauteous as a god. Hector's round shield showed in the front rank, and as some baneful star that shines for a moment through a rent in the clouds, and it is again hidden beneath them, even so was Hector now seen in the front ranks, and now again in the hindermost, and his bronze armour gleamed like the lightning of Aegis-bearing Jove. And now was a band of reapers mow swathes of wheat or barley upon a rich man's land, and the sheaves fall thick before them, even so did the Trojans and Achaeans fall upon one another. They were in no mood for yielding, but fought like wolves, and neither side got the better of the other. Discord was glad as she beheld them, for she was the only god that went among them. The others were not there, but stayed quietly, each in his own home, among the dells and valleys of Olympus. All of them blamed the son of Saturn for wanting to give victory to the Trojans, but Father Jove heeded them not. He held aloof from all, and sat apart in his all-glorious majesty, looking down upon the city of the Trojans, the ships of the Achaeans, the gleam of bronze, and alike upon the slayers, and on the slain. Now so long as the day waxed and it was still morning, the darts rained thick on one another, and the people perished. But as the hour drew nigh, when a woodman, working in some mountain forest, will get his midday meal, for he has felled till his hands are weary, he is tired out, and must now have food. Then the Danaans, with a cry that rang through all their ranks, broke the battalions of the enemy. Agamemnon led them on, and slew first Bienor, a leader of his people, and afterwards his comrade and charioteer Oileus, who sprung from his chariot and was coming full towards him. But Agamemnon struck him on the forehead with his spear. His bronze visor was of no avail against the weapon, which pierced both bronze and bone, so that his brains were battered in, and he was killed in full fight. Agamemnon stripped their shirts from off them, and left them with their breasts all bare to lie where they had fallen. He then went on to kill Isus and Antiphus, 2 sons of Priam, the one a bastard, the other born in wedlock. They were in the same chariot, the bastard driving, while noble Antiphus fought beside him. Achilles had once taken both of them prisoners in the glades of Ida, and had bound them with fresh withes as they were shepherding, but he had taken a ransom for them. Now, however, Agamemnon, son of Atreus, smote Isus in the chest above the nipple with his spear, while he struck Antiphus hard by the ear and threw him from his chariot. Forthwith he stripped their goodly armour from off them, and recognized them, for he had already seen them at ships when Achilles brought them from Ida. As a lion fastens on the fawns of a hind, and crushes them in his great jaws, robbing them of their tender life while he on his way back to his lair, the hind can do nothing for them, even though she be close by, for she is in an agony of fear, and flies through the thick forest, sweating, and at her utmost speed before the mighty monster. So no man of the Trojans could help Isus and Antiphus, for they were themselves flying panic before the Argives. Then King Agamemnon took the 2 sons of Antimachus, Pisander and brave Hippolochus. It was Antimachus who had been foremost in preventing Helen's being restored to Menelaus, for he was largely bribed by Alexandrus. And now Agamemnon took his 2 sons, both in the same chariot, trying to bring their horses to a stand, for they had lost the hold of their reins, and the horses were mad with fear. The son of Atreus sprang upon them like a lion, and the pair besought him from their chariot. "Take us alive," they cried, "son of Atreus, and you shall receive a great ransom for us. Our father Antimachus has a great store of gold, bronze, and wrought iron, and from this he will satisfy you with a very large ransom should he hear of our being alive at the ships of the Achaeans." With such piteous words and tears did they beseech the king, but they heard no pitiful answer in return. "If," said Agamemnon, "you are sons of Antimachus, who once at a council of Trojans proposed that Menelaus and Ulysses, who had come to you as envoys, should be killed and not suffered to return, you shall now pay for the foul iniquity of your father." As he spoke, he felled Pisander from his chariot to the earth, smiting him on the chest with his spear, so that he lay face uppermost upon the ground. Hippolochus fled, but him too did Agamemnon smite. He cut off his hands and his head, which he sent rolling in among the crowd, as though it were a ball. There he let them both lie, and wherever the ranks were thickest, thither he flew, while the other Achaeans followed. Foot soldiers drove the foot soldiers of the foe in rout before them, and slew them. Horsemen did the like by horsemen, and the thundering tramp of the horses raised a cloud of dust from off the plain. King Agamemnon followed after, ever slaying them and cheering on the Achaeans, as when some mighty forest is all ablaze, the eddying gusts whirl fire in all directions till the thickets shrivel and are consumed before the blast of flame. Even so fell the heads of the flying Trojans before Agamemnon son of Atreus, and many a noble pair of steeds drew an empty chariot along the highways of war, for lack of drivers who were lying on the plain, more useful now to vultures than to their wives. Jove drew Hector away from the darts and dust, with the carnage and din of battle, but the son of Atreus sped onwards, calling out lustily to the Danaans. They flew on by the tomb of old Ilus, son of Dardanus, in the middle of the plain, and past the palace of the wild fig tree, making always for the city, the son of Atreus still shouting, and with hands all bedrabbled in gore. But when they had reached the sea and gates and the oak tree, there they halted and waited for the others to come up. Meanwhile the Trojans kept on flying over the middle of the plain like a herd of cows maddened with fright when a lion has attacked them in the dead of night. He springs on one of them, seizes her neck in the grip of his strong teeth, then laps up her blood and gorges himself upon her entrails. Even so did King Agamemnon son of Atreus pursue the foe, ever slaughtering the hindmost as they fled pell-mell before him. Many a man was flung headlong from his chariot by the hand of the son of Atreus, for he wielded his spear with fury. But when he was just about to reach the high wall and the city, the Father of gods and men came down from heaven, and took his seat thunderbolt in hand upon the crest of many-fountained Ida. He then told Iris of the golden wings to carry a message for him. "Go," said he, "fleet Iris, and speak thus to Hector. Say that so long as he sees Agamemnon heading his men and making havoc of the Trojan ranks, he is to keep aloof and bid the others bear the brunt of the battle. But when Agamemnon is wounded either by spear or arrow, and takes to his chariot, then will I vouchsafe him strength to slay till he reach the ships and night falls at the going down of the sun." Iris hearkened and obeyed. Down she went to strong Ilius from the crests of Ida, and found Hector son of Priam standing by his chariot and horses. Then she said, "Hector son of Priam, peer of gods in council, Father Jove has sent me to bear you this message. So long as you see Agamemnon heading his men and making havoc of the Trojan ranks, you are to keep aloof and bid the others bear the brunt of the battle. But when Agamemnon is wounded, either by spear or arrow, and takes to his chariot, then will Jove vouchsafe you strength to slay till you reach the ships, and till night falls at the going down of the sun." When she had thus spoken, Iris left him, and Hector sprang full-armed from his chariot to the ground, brandishing his spear as he went about everywhere among the host, cheering his men on to fight, and stirring the dread strife of battle. The Trojans then wheeled round, and again met the Achaeans, while the Argives on their part strengthened their battalions. The battle was now in array, and they stood face to face with one another, Agamemnon ever pressing forward in his eagerness to be ahead of all others. "Tell me now, ye muses that dwell in the mansions of Olympus, Who, whether of the Trojans or of their allies, was first to face Agamemnon? It was Iphidamas, son of Antenor, a man both brave and of great stature, who was brought up in fertile Thrace, the mother of sheep. Cisses, his mother's father, brought him up in his own house when he was a child, Cisses, father to fair Theano. When he reached manhood, Cisses would have kept him there, and was for giving him to his daughter in marriage. But as soon as he had married, he set out to fight the Achaeans with 12 ships that followed him. These he had left at Percote, and had come on by land to Ilius. He it was that now met Agamemnon, son of Atreus. When they were close up with one another, the son of Atreus missed his aim, and Iphidamas hit him upon the girdle below the cuirass, then flung himself upon him, trusting to his strength of arm. The girdle, however, was not pierced, nor nearly so, for the point of the spear struck against the silver, and was turned aside as though it had been lead. King Agamemnon caught it from his hand, and drew it towards him with the fury of a lion. He then drew his sword, and killed Iphidamas by striking him on the neck. So there the poor fellow lay, sleeping a sleep as it were of bronze, killed in the defence of his fellow citizens, far from his wedded wife, of whom he had no joy, though he had given much for her. He had given 100 head of cattle down, and had promised later on to give 1,000 sheep and goats mixed, from the countless flocks of which he was possessed. Agamemnon, son of Atreus, then despoiled him, and carried off his armour into the host of the Achaeans. When noble Coon, Antenor's eldest son, saw this, sore indeed were his eyes at the sight of his fallen brother. Unseen by Agamemnon, he got beside him, spear in hand, and wounded him in the middle of his arm below the elbow, the point of the spear going right through the arm. Agamemnon was convulsed with pain, but still not even for this did he leave off struggling and fighting, but grasped his spear that flew as fleet as the wind, and sprang upon Coon, who was trying to drag off the body of his brother, his father's son, by the foot, and was crying for help to all the bravest of his comrades. But Agamemnon struck him with a bronze-shod spear, and killed him as he was dragging the dead body through the press of men under cover of his shield. He then cut off his head, standing over the body of Iphidamas. Thus did the sons of Antenor meet their fate at the hands of the son of Atreus, and go down into the house of Hades. As long as the blood still welled warm from his wound, Agamemnon went about attacking the ranks of the enemy with spear and sword, and with great handfuls of stone. But when the blood had ceased to flow and the wound grew dry, the pain became great, as the sharp pangs which the Eilithuiae, goddesses of childbirth, daughters of Juno, and dispensers of cruel pain, send upon a woman when she is in labour, even so sharp were the pangs of the son of Atreus. He sprang onto his chariot, and bade his charioteer drive to the ships, for he was in great agony. With a loud, clear voice he shouted to the Danaans, "My friends, princes, and counsellors of the Argives, defend the ships yourselves, for Jove has not suffered me to fight the whole day through against the Trojans." With this the charioteer turned his horses towards the ships, and they flew forward nothing loath. Their chests were white with foam, and their bellies with dust, as they drew the wounded king out of the battle. When Hector saw Agamemnon quit the field, he shouted to the Trojans and the Lycians, saying, "Trojans, Lycians, and Dardanian warriors, be men, my friends, and acquit yourselves in battle bravely. Their best man has left them, and Jove has vouchsafed me a great triumph. Charge the foe with your chariots, that you may win still greater glory." With these words he put heart and soul into them all, and as a huntsman hounds his dogs on against a lion or a wild boar, even so did Hector, peer of Mars, hound the proud Trojans on against the Achaeans. Full of hope he plunged in among the foremost, and fell on the fight like some fierce tempest that swoops down upon the sea, and lashes its deep blue waters into fury. What, then, is the full tale of those whom Hector son of Priam killed in the hour of triumph which Jove then vouchsafed him? First Asius, Ortinus, and Opetes, Dolops son of Clytius, Opheltius, and Agelaus, Isimnus, Orus, and Hipponous, steadfast in battle. These chieftains of the Achaeans did Hector slay, and then he fell upon the rank and file. as when the west wind hustles the clouds of the white south and beats them down with the fierceness of its fury, the waves of the sea roll high, and the spray is flung aloft in the rage of the wandering wind, even so thick were the heads of them that fell by the hand of Hector. All had then been lost, and no help for it, and the Achaeans would have fled pell-mell to their ships, had not Ulysses cried out to Diomed, "Son of Tydeus, what has happened to us that we thus forget our prowess? Come, my good fellow, stand by my side and help me. We shall be shamed for ever if Hector takes the ships." And Diomed answered, "Come what may, I will stand firm, but we shall have scant joy of it, for Jove is minded to give victory to the Trojans rather than to us." With these words he struck Thymbraeus from his chariot to the ground, smiting him in the left breast with his spear, while Ulysses killed Molion, who was his squire. These they let lie now that they had stopped their fighting. The two heroes then went on playing havoc with the foe, like two wild boars that turn in fury and rend the hounds that hunt them. Thus did they turn upon the Trojans and slay them, and the Achaeans were thankful to have breathing time in their flight from Hector. They then took two princes with their chariot, the two sons of Merops of Percote, who excelled all others in the arts of divination. He had forbidden his sons to go to the war, but they would not obey him, for fate lured them to their fall. Diomed son of Tydeus slew both of them and stripped them of their armour, while Ulysses killed Hippodamus and Hyperochus. And now the son of Saturn, as he looked down from Ida, ordained that neither side should have the advantage, and they kept on killing one another. The son of Tydeus speared Agastrophus, son of Paeon, in the hip joint with his spear. His chariot was not at hand for him to fly with, so blindly confident had he been. His squire was in charge of it at some distance, and he was fighting on foot among the foremost until he lost his life. Hector soon marked the havoc Diomed and Ulysses were making, and bore down upon them with a loud cry, followed by the Trojan ranks. Brave Diomed was dismayed when he saw them, and said to Ulysses, who was beside him, "Great Hector is bearing down upon us, and we shall be undone. Let us stand firm and wait his onset." He poised his spear as he spoke and hurled it, nor did he miss his mark. He had aimed at Hector's head near the top of his helmet, but bronze was turned by bronze, and Hector was untouched, for the spear was stayed by the visored helm made with 3 plates of metal, which Phoebus Apollo had given him. Hector sprang back with a great bound under cover of the ranks. He fell on his knees and propped himself with his brawny hand, leaning on the ground, for darkness had fallen on his eyes. The son of Tydeus, having thrown his spear, dashed in among the foremost fighters to the place where he had seen it strike the ground. Meanwhile Hector recovered himself, and springing back into his chariot mingled with the crowd, by which means he saved his life. But Diomed made at him with his spear and said, "Dog, you have again got away, though death was close on your heels. Phoebus Apollo, to whom I ween you pray ere you go into battle, has again saved you. Nevertheless, I will meet you, and make an end of you hereafter, if there is any god who will stand by me too, and be my helper. For the present, I must pursue those I can lay hands on." As he spoke, he began stripping the spoils from the sons of Paeon, but Alexandrus, husband of lovely Helen, aimed an arrow at him, leaning against a pillar of the monument which men had raised to Ilus, son of Dardanus, a ruler in the days of old. Diomed had taken the cuirass from off the breast of Agastrophus, his heavy helmet also, and the shield from off his shoulders, when Paris drew his bow and let fly an arrow that sped not from his hand in vain, but pierced the flat of Diomed's right foot, going right through it and fixing itself in the ground. Thereon Paris, with a hearty laugh, sprang forward from his hiding place, and taunted him, saying, "You are wounded. My arrow has not been shot in vain. Would that it had hit you in the belly and killed you, for thus the Trojans, who fear you as goats fear a lion, would have had a truce from evil." Diomed, all undaunted, answered, "Archer, you who without your bow are nothing, slanderer and seducer, if you were to be tried in single combat fighting in full armour, your bow and your arrows would serve you in little stead, Vain is your boast in that you have scratched the sole of my foot. I care no more than if a girl or some silly boy had hit me. A worthless coward can inflict but a light wound. When I wound a man, though I but graze his skin, it is another matter, for my weapon will lay him low. His wife will tear her cheeks for grief, and his children will be fatherless. There he will rot, reddening the earth with his blood, and vultures, not women, will gather round him. Thus he spoke, but Ulysses came up and stood over him. Under this cover he sat down to draw the arrow from his foot, and sharp was the pain he suffered as he did so. Then he sprang on to his chariot and bade the charioteer drive him to the ships, for he was sick at heart. Ulysses was now alone. Not one of the Argives stood by him, for they were all panic-stricken. "Alas," he said to himself in his dismay, "what will become of me? It is ill if I turn and fly before these odds, but it will be worse if I am left alone and taken prisoner, for the son of Saturn has struck the rest of the Danaans with panic. But why talk to myself in this way? Well do I know that though cowards quit the field, a hero, whether he wound or be wounded, must stand firm and hold his own." While he was thus in two minds, the ranks of the Trojans advanced and hemmed him in, and bitterly did they come to rue it. As hounds and lusty youths set upon a wild boar that sallies from his lair, whetting his white tusks, they attack him from every side, and can hear the gnashing of his jaws, but for all his fierceness they still hold their ground. Even so furiously did the Trojans attack Ulysses. First he sprang spear in hand upon Diopetes, and wounded him on the shoulder with a downward blow. Then he killed Thoon and Ennomus. After these he struck Chersidamus in the loins under his shield, as he had just sprung down from his chariot. So he fell in the dust and clutched the earth with the hollow of his hand. These he let lie, and went on to wound Charops, son of Hippasus, own brother to noble Socus. Socus, hero that he was, made all speed to help him, and when he was close to Ulysses, said, "Far-famed Ulysses, insatiable of craft and toil, this day you shall either boast of having killed both the sons of Hippasus and stripped them of their armour, or you shall fall before my spear." With these words he struck the shield of Ulysses. The spear went through the shield and passed on through his richly wrought cuirass, tearing the flesh from his side. But Pallas Minerva did not suffer it to pierce the entrails of the hero. Ulysses knew that his hour was not yet come, but he gave ground and said to Socus, "Wretch, you shall now surely die. You have stayed me from fighting further with the Trojans, but you shall now fall by my spear, yielding glory to myself, and your soul to Hades of the noble steeds." Socus had turned in flight, but as he did so, the spear struck him in the back midway between the shoulders, and went right through his chest. He fell heavily to the ground, and Ulysses vaunted over him, saying, "O Socus, son of Hippasus, tamer of horses, death has been too quick for you, and you have not escaped him. Poor wretch! Not even in death shall your father and mother close your eyes, but the ravening vultures shall enshroud you with the flapping of their dark wings and devour you. Whereas even though I fall, the Achaeans will give me my due rites of burial." So saying, he drew Socus' heavy spear out of his flesh and from his shield, and the blood welled forth when the spear was withdrawn, so that he was much dismayed. When the Trojans saw that Ulysses was bleeding, they raised a great shout, and came on in a body towards him. He therefore gave ground, and called his comrades to come and help him. Thrice did he cry loudly as man can cry, and thrice did brave Menelaus hear him. He turned therefore to Ajax, who was close beside him, and said, "Ajax, noble son of Telamon, captain of your people, the cry of Ulysses rings in my ears, as though the Trojans had cut him off and were worsting him while he is single-handed. Let us make our way through the throng. It will be well that we defend him. I fear he may come to harm for all his valour if he be left without support, and the Danaans would miss him sorely." He led the way, and mighty Ajax went with him. The Trojans had gathered round Ulysses like ravenous mountain jackals round the carcass of some horned stag that has been hit with an arrow. The stag has fled at full speed so long as his blood was warm and his strength has lasted, but when the arrow has overcome him, the savage jackals devoured him in the shady glades of the forest. Then heaven sends a fierce lion thither, whereupon the jackals fly in terror, and the lion robs them of their prey. Even so did Trojans many and brave gather round crafty Ulysses, but the hero stood at bay and kept them off with his spear. Ajax then came up with his shield before him like a wall, and stood hard by, whereon the Trojans fled in all directions. Menelaus took Ulysses by the hand, and led him out of the press, while his squire brought up his chariot. But Ajax rushed furiously on the Trojans, and killed Doryclus, bastard son of Priam. Then he wounded Pandocus, Lysandrus, Paraesus, and Pilates. As some swollen torrent comes rushing in full flood from the mountains onto the plain, big with the rain of heaven, many a dry oak and a pine does it engulf, and much mud does it bring down and cast into the sea, even so did brave Ajax chase the foe furiously over the plain, slaying both men and horses. Hector did not yet know what Ajax was doing, for he was fighting on the extreme left of the battle by the banks of the river Scamander, where the carnage was thickest and the war cry loudest round Nestor and brave Idomeneus. Among these Hector was making great slaughter with his spear and furious driving, and was destroying the ranks that were opposed to him. Still the Achaeans would have given no ground, had not Alexandrus, husband of lovely Helen, stayed the prowess of Machaon, shepherd of his people, by wounding him in the right shoulder with a triple barbed arrow. The Achaeans were in great fear that as the fight had turned against them, the Trojans might take him prisoner, and Idomeneus said to Nestor, "Nestor, son of Neleus, honour to the Achaean name, mount your chariot at once. Take Machaon with you, and drive your horses to the ships as fast as you can. A physician is worth more than several other men put together, for he can cut out arrows and spread healing herbs." Nestor, knight of Gerene, did as Idomeneus had counselled. He at once mounted his chariot, and Machaon, son of the famed physician Aesculapius, went with him. He lashed his horses, and they flew onward nothing loath towards the ships, as though of their own free will. Then Cebriones, seeing the Trojans in confusion, said to Hector from his place beside him, "Hector, here are we two fighting on the extreme wing of the battle, while the other Trojans are in pell-mell rout, they and their horses. Ajax son of Telamon is driving them before him. I know him by the breadth of his shield. Let us turn our chariot and horses thither, where horse and foot are fighting most desperately, and where the cry of battle is loudest." With this he lashed his goodly steeds, and when they felt the whip they drew the chariot full speed amongst the Achaeans and Trojans, over the bodies and shields of those that had fallen. The axle was bespattered with blood, and the rail round the car was covered with splashes, both from the horses' hoofs and from the tires of the wheels. Hector tore his way through and flung himself into the thick of the fight, and his presence threw the Danaans into confusion, for his spear was not long idle. Nevertheless he went among the ranks with sword and spear, and throwing great stones he avoided Ajax son of Telamon, for Jove would have been angry with him if he had fought a better man than himself. Then Father Jove, from his high throne, struck fear into the heart of Ajax, so that he stood there dazed, and threw his shield behind him, looking fearfully at the throng of his foes, as though he were some wild beast, turning hither and thither, but crouching slowly backwards. As peasants with their hounds chase a lion from their stockyard, and watch by night to prevent his carrying off the pick of their herd, he makes his greedy spring, but in vain, for the darts from many a strong hand fall thick around him with burning brands that scare him for all his fury, and when morning comes he slinks, foiled and angry, away. Even so did Ajax, sorely against his will, retreat angrily before the Trojans, fearing for the ships of the Achaeans, or as some lazy ass that has had many a cudgel broken about his back, when he into a field begins eating the corn. Boys beat him, but he is too many for them, and though they lay about with their sticks they cannot hurt him. Still, when he has had his fill, they at last drive him from the field. Even so did the Trojans and their allies pursue great Ajax, ever smiting the middle of his shield with their darts. Now and again he would turn and show fight, keeping back the battalions of the Trojans, and then he would again retreat. But he prevented any of them from making his way to the ships. Single-handed, he stood midway between the Trojans and the Achaeans. The spears that sped from their hands stuck some of them in his mighty shield, while many, though thirsting for his blood, fell to the ground ere they could reach him to the wounding of his fair flesh. Now when Eurypylus, the brave son of Euaemon, saw that Ajax was being overpowered by the rain of arrows, he went up to him and hurled his spear. He struck Apisaon, son of Phausius, in the liver below the midriff, and laid him low. Eurypylus sprung upon him and stripped the armour from his shoulders, but when Alexandrus saw him, he aimed an arrow at him which struck him in the right thigh. The arrow broke, but the point that was left in the wound dragged on the thigh. He drew back, therefore, and under cover of his comrades to save his life, shouting as he did so to the Danaans, "My friends, princes and counsellors of the Argives, rally to the defence of Ajax, who is being overpowered, and I doubt whether he will come out of the fight alive. Hither then to the rescue of great Ajax, son of Telamon." Even so did he cry when he was wounded. Thereon the others came near, and gathered round him, holding their shields upwards from their shoulders, so as to give him cover. Ajax then made towards them, and turned round to stand at bay as soon as he had reached his men. Thus then did they fight as it were a flaming fire. Meanwhile the mares of Neleus, all in a lather with sweat, were bearing Nestor out of the fight, and with him Machaon, shepherd of his people. Achilles saw and took note, for he was standing on the stern of his ship, watching the hard stress and struggle of the fight. He called from the ship to his comrade Patroclus, who heard him in the tent and came out looking like Mars himself. Here indeed was the beginning of the ill that presently befell him. "Why," said he, "Achilles, do you call me? What do you want with me?" And Achilles answered, "Noble son of Menoetius, a man after my own heart, I take it that I shall now have the Achaeans praying at my knees, for they are in great straits. Go, Patroclus, and ask Nestor who it is that he is bearing away wounded from the field. From his back, I should say, it was Machaon, son of Asclepius, but I could not see his face, for the horses went by me at full speed." Patroclus did as his dear comrade had bidden him, and set off running by the ships and tents of the Achaeans. When Nestor and Machaon had reached the tents of the son of Neleus, they dismounted, and an esquire, Eurymedon, took the horses from the chariot. The pair then stood in the breeze by the seaside to dry the sweat from their shirts, and when they had so done they came inside and took their seats. Fair Hecamede, whom Nestor had awarded him from Tenedos when Achilles took it, mixed them a mess. She was daughter of wise Arsinous, and the Achaeans had given her to Nestor because he excelled all of them in counsel. First she set for them a fair and well-made table that had feet of cyanus. On it there was a vessel of bronze and an onion to give relish to the drink, with honey and cakes of barley meal. There was also a cup of rare workmanship, which the old man had brought with him from home, studded with bosses of gold. It had 4 handles, on each of which there were 2 golden doves feeding, and it had 2 feet to stand on. Anyone else would hardly have been able to lift it from the table when it was full, but Nestor could do it quite easily. In this the woman, as fair as a goddess, mixed them a mess with Pramnian wine. She grated goat's milk cheese into it with a bronze grater, threw in a handful of white barley meal, and having thus prepared the mess, she bade them drink it. And when they had done so, and had thus quenched their thirst, they fell talking with one another, and at this moment Patroclus appeared at the door. When the old man saw him, he sprang from his seat, seized his hand, led him into the tent, and bade him take his place among them. But Patroclus stood where he was, and said, "Noble sir, I may not stay, you cannot persuade me to come in. He that sent me is not one to be trifled with, and he bade me ask who the wounded man was whom you were bearing away from the field. I can now see for myself that he is Machaon, shepherd of his people. I must go back and tell Achilles. You, sir, know what a terrible man he is, and how ready to blame even where no blame should lie." And Nestor answered, "Why should Achilles care to know how many of the Achaeans may be wounded? He recks not of the dismay that reigns in our host. Our most valiant chieftains lie disabled. Brave Diomed, son of Tydeus, is wounded. So are Ulysses and Agamemnon. Eurypylus has been hit with an arrow in the thigh, and I have just been bringing this man from the field, he too wounded with an arrow. Nevertheless, Achilles, so valiant though he be, cares not, and knows no ruth. Will he wait till the ships, do what we may, are in a blaze, and we perish one upon the other? As for me, I have no strength nor stay in me any longer. Would that I were still young and strong, as in the days when there was a fight between us and the men of Elis about some cattle raiding. Then I killed Itomeneus, the valiant son of Hypericus, the dweller in Elis, as I was driving in the spoil. He was hit by a dart thrown by my hand while fighting in the front rank in defence of his cows, so he fell, and the country people about him were in great fear. We drove off a vast quantity of booty from the plain, 50 herds of cattle, and as many flocks of sheep, 50 droves also of pigs, and as many wide-spreading flocks of goats. Of horses, moreover, we seized 150, all of them mares, and many had foals running with them. All these did we drive by night to Pylos, the city of Neleus, taking them within the city, and the heart of Neleus was glad in that I had taken so much, though it was the first time I had ever been in the field. At daybreak the heralds went round crying that all in Elis to whom there was a debt owing should come, and the leading Pylians assembled to divide the spoils. There were many to whom the Epeans owed chattels, for we men of Pylos were few, and had been oppressed with wrong. In former years Hercules had come, and laid his hand heavy upon us, so that all our best men had perished. Neleus had 12 sons, but I alone was left. The others had all been killed. The Epeans, presuming upon all this, had looked down upon us and done us much evil. My father chose a herd of cattle and a great flock of sheep, 300 in all. And he took their shepherds with him, for there was a great debt due to him in Elis, to wit 4 horses, winners of prizes. They and their chariots with them had gone to the games, and were to run for a tripod. But King Augeas took them, and sent them back their driver, grieving for the loss of his horses. Neleus was angered by what he had both said and done, and took great value in return, but he divided the rest, that no man might have less than his full share. Thus did we order all things, and offer sacrifices to the gods throughout the city. But 3 days afterwards the Epeans came in a body, many in number, they and their chariots in full array, and with them the 2 Moliones in their armour, though they were still lads and unused to fighting. Now, there is a certain town, Theoroessa, perched upon a rock in the river Alpheus, the border city Pylos. This they would destroy, and pitch their camp about it. But when they had crossed their whole plain, Minerva darted down by night from Olympus, and bade us set ourselves in array, and she found willing soldiers in Pylos, for the men meant fighting. Neleus would not let me arm, and hid my horses, for he said that as yet I could know nothing about war. Nevertheless, Minerva so ordered the fight that, all on foot as I was, I fought among our mounted forces and vied with the foremost of them. There is a river Menaius that falls into the sea near Arene, and there they that were mounted, and I with them, waited till morning, when the companies of foot soldiers came up with us in force. Thence, in full panoply and equipment, we came towards noon to the sacred waters of the Alpheus, and there we offered victims to almighty Jove, with a bull to Alpheus, another to Neptune, and a herd heifer to Minerva. After this we took supper in our companies, and laid us down to rest, each in his armour by the river. The Epeans were beleaguering the city, and were determined to take it, but ere this might be, there was a desperate fight in store for them. When the sun's rays began to fall upon the earth, we joined battle, praying to Jove and to Minerva, and when the fight had begun, I was the first to kill my man and take his horses, to wit, the warrior Milius. He was son-in-law to Augeas, having married his eldest daughter, golden-hair Agamede, who knew the virtues of every herb which grows upon the face of the earth. I speared him as he was coming towards me, and when he fell headlong in the dust, I sprang upon his chariot and took my place in the front ranks. The Epeans fled in all directions when they saw the captain of their horsemen, the best man they had, laid low, and I swept down on them like a whirlwind, taking 50 chariots, and in each of them 2 men bit the dust, slain by my spear. I should have even killed the 2 Moliones, sons of Actor, unless their real father, Neptune, lord of the earthquake, had hidden them in a thick mist, and borne them out of the fight. Thereon Jove vouchsafed the Pylians a great victory, for we chased them far over the plain, killing the men and bringing in their armour, till we had brought our horses to Buprasium, rich in wheat, and to the Olenaean rock, with the hill that is called Elysian, at which point Minerva turned the people back. There I slew the last man and left him. Then the Achaeans drove their horses back from Buprasium to Pylos, and gave thanks to Jove among the gods, and among mortal men to Nestor. Such was I among my peers, as surely as ever was, but Achilles is for keeping all his valour for himself. Bitterly will he rue it hereafter, when the host is being cut to pieces. My good friend, did not Menœtius charge you thus on the day when he sent you from Phthia to Agamemnon? Ulysses and I were in the house inside, and heard all that he said to you, for we came to the fair house of Peleus while beating up recruits throughout all Achaea, and when we got there, we found Menœtius and yourself and Achilles with you. The old knight Peleus was in the outer court, roasting the fat thigh bones of a heifer to Jove, the lord of thunder, and he held a gold chalice in his hand, from which he poured drink offerings of wine over the burning sacrifice. You two were busy cutting up the heifer, and at that moment we stood at the gates, whereupon Achilles sprang to his feet, led us by the hand into the house, placed us at table, and set before us such hospitable entertainment as guests expect. When we had satisfied ourselves with meat and drink, I said my say, and urged both of you to join us. You were ready enough to do so, and the 2 old men charged you much and straitly. Old Peleus bade his son Achilles to fight ever among the foremost, and outvie his peers, while Menœtius, the son of Actor, spoke thus to you. My son, said he, Achilles is of nobler birth than you are, but you are older than he, though he is far better man of the 2. Counsel him wisely, guide him in the right way, and he will follow you to his own profit. Thus did your father charge you, but you have forgotten. Nevertheless, even now, say all this to Achilles, if he will listen to you. Who knows but with heaven's help you may talk him over, for it is good to take a friend's advice. If, however, he is fearful about some oracle, or if his mother has told him something from Jove, then let him send you, and let the rest of the Myrmidons follow with you, if perchance you may bring light and saving to the Danaans. And let him send you into battle clad in his own armour, that the Trojans may mistake you for him and leave off fighting. The sons of the Achaeans may thus have time to get their breath, for they are hard pressed, and there is little breathing time in battle. You who are fresh might easily drive a tired enemy back to his walls and away from the tents and ships." With these words he moved the heart of Patroclus, who set off running by the line of ships to Achilles, descendant of Aeacus. When he had got as far as the ships of Ulysses, where was the place of assembly and court of justice, with their altars dedicated to the gods, Eurypylus, son of Euaemon, met him, wounded in the thigh with an arrow, and limping out of the fight. Sweat rained from his head and shoulders, and black blood welled from his cruel wound, but his mind did not wander. The son of Menoetius, when he saw him, had compassion upon him, and spoke piteously, saying, "O unhappy princes and counsellors of the Danaans, are you then doomed to feed the hounds of Troy with your fat, far from your friends and your native land? Say, noble Eurypylus, will the Achaeans be able to hold great Hector in check, or will they fall now before his spear?" Wounded Eurypylus made answer, "Noble Patroclus, there is no hope left for the Achaeans, but they will perish at their ships. All they that were princes among us are lying struck down and wounded at the hands of the Trojans, who are waxing stronger and stronger. But save me, and take me to your ship. Cut out the arrow from my thigh, wash the black blood from off it with warm water, and lay upon it those gracious herbs which, so they say, have been shown you by Achilles, who was himself shown them by Chiron, most righteous of all the centaurs. For of the physicians Podalirius and Machaon, I hear that the one is lying wounded in his tent, and is himself in need of healing, while the other is fighting the Trojans on the plain." "Hear, O Eurypylus," replied the brave son of Menoetius. "How may these things be? What can I do? I am on my way to bear a message to noble Achilles from Nestor of Gerene, bulwark of the Achaeans. But even so I will not be unmindful of your distress." With this he clasped him round the middle, and led him into the tent, and a servant, when he saw him, spread bullock skins on the ground for him to lie on. He laid him at full length, and cut out the sharp arrow from his thigh. He washed the black blood from the wound with warm water. He then crushed a bitter herb, rubbing it between his hands, and spread it upon the wound. This was a virtuous herb, which killed all pain, so the wound presently dried, and the blood left off flowing. End of Book 11. Recording by Peter Darby. Pete_Darby.livejournal.com.
Book 12 of the Iliad. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Iliad by Homer, translated by Samuel Butler, Book 12. Recording by M.L. Cohen. Book 12. The Trojans and their allies break the wall, led on by Hector. So the son of Menoetius was attending to the hurt of Eurypylus within the tent, but the Argives and Trojans still fought desperately, nor were the trench and the high wall above it to keep the Trojans in check any longer. They had built it to protect their ships, and had dug the trench all round it that it might safeguard both the ships and the rich spoils which they had taken, but they had not offered hecatombs to the gods. It had been built without the consent of the immortals, and therefore it did not last. So long as Hector lived and Achilles nursed his anger, and so long as the city of Priam remained untaken, the great wall of the Achaeans stood firm. But when the bravest of the Trojans were no more, and many also of the Argives, though some were yet still left alive, when moreover the city was sacked in the 10th year, and the Argives had gone back with their ships to their own country, Then Neptune and Apollo took counsel to destroy the wall, and they turned onto it the streams of all the rivers from Mount Ida to the sea, Rhesus, Heptaporus, Carius, Rhodius, Granitius, Aesopus, and goodly Scamander, with Simois, where many a shield and helm had fallen, and many a hero of the race of demigods had bitten the dust. Phoebus Apollo turned the mouths of all the rivers together and made them flow for 9 days against the wall, while Jove reigned the whole time that he might wash it sooner into the sea. Neptune himself, trident in hand, surveyed the work and threw into the sea all the foundations of beams and stones which the Achaeans had laid with so much toil. He made all level by the mighty stream of the Hellespont, and then when he had swept the wall away, he spread a great beach of sand over the place where it had been. This done, he turned the rivers back into their old courses. This was what Neptune and Apollo were to do in after time. But as yet battle and turmoil were still raging round the wall till its timbers rang under the blows that rained upon them. The Argives, cowed by the scourge of Jove, were hemmed in at their ships in fear of Hector, the mighty minister of rout, who as heretofore fought with the force and fury of a whirlwind. As a lion or wild boar turns fiercely on the dogs and men that attack him, while these form solid wall and shower their javelins as they face him, his courage is all undaunted, but his high spirit will be the death of him. Many a time does he charge at his pursuers to scatter them, and they fall back as often as he does so. Even so did Hector go about among the host exhorting his men and cheering them on to cross the trench. But the horses dared not do so, and stood neighing upon its brink, for the width frightened them. They could neither jump it nor cross it, for it had overhanging banks all round upon either side, above which there were the sharp stakes that the sons of the Achaeans had planted so close and strong as a defence against all who would assail it. A horse, therefore, could not get into it and draw his chariot after him, but those who were on foot kept trying their very utmost. Then Polydamas went up to Hector and said, "Hector, and you other captains of the Trojans and allies, it is madness for us to try and drive our horses across the trench. It will be very hard to cross, for it is full of sharp stakes, and beyond this there is a wall. Our horses therefore cannot get down into it, and would be of no use if they did. Moreover, it is a narrow pass, and we should come to harm. If indeed great Jove is minded to help the Trojans, and in his anger will utterly destroy the Achaeans, I would myself gladly see them perish now and here far from Argos. But if they should rally, and we are driven back from the ships pell-mell into the trench, there will be not so much as a man get back to the city to tell the tale. Now therefore, let us all do as I say. Let our squires hold our horses by the trench, but let us follow Hector in a body on foot, clad in full armour, and if the day of their doom is at hand, the Achaeans will not be able to withstand us." Thus spoke Polydamas, and his saying pleased Hector, who sprang in full armour to the ground, and all the other Trojans, when they saw him do so, also left their chariots. Each man then gave his horses over to his charioteer in charge to hold them ready for him at the trench. Then they formed themselves into companies, made themselves ready, and in 5 bodies followed their leaders. Those that went with Hector and Polydamas were the bravest and most in number, and the most determined to break through the wall and fight at the ships. Cebriones were also joined with them as a third in command, for Hector had left his chariot in charge of a less valiant soldier. The next company was led by Paris, Alcathous, and Agenor, the third by Helenus and Deiphobus, 2 sons of Priam, and with them was the hero Asius, Asius the son of Hyrtacus, whose great black horses of the breed that come from the river Celeus had bought him from Arisbe. Aeneas, the valiant son of Anchises, led the fourth. He and the 2 sons of Antenor, Archelochus and Nicamus, men well versed in all the arts of war. Sarpedon was captain over the allies, and took with him Glaucus and Asteropaeus, whom he deemed most valiant after himself, for he was by far the best man of them all. These helped to array one another in their ox-hide shields, and then charged straight at the Danaans, for they felt sure they would not hold out longer, and that they should themselves now fall upon the ships. The rest of the Trojans and their allies now followed the counsel of Polydamas, but Asius, son of Hyrtacus, would not leave his horses and his esquire behind him. In his foolhardiness he took them on with him towards the ship, nor did he fail to come by his end in consequence. Never more was he to return to wind-bitten Ilius, exulting in his chariot and his horses. Ere he could do so, Death of ill-omened maim had overshadowed him, and he had fallen by the spear of Idomeneus, the noble son of Deucalion. He had driven towards the left wing of the ships, by which the Achaeans used to return with their chariots and horses from the plain. Hither he drove, and found the gates with their doors open wide, and the great bar down. For the gatemen kept them open so as to let those of their comrades enter who might be flying towards the ships. Hither of set purpose did he direct his horses, and his men followed him with a loud cry, for they felt sure that the Achaeans would not hold out longer, and that they should now fall upon the ships. Little did they know that at the gates they should find two of the bravest chieftains, proud sons of the fighting Lapithae, the one Polypoetus, mighty son of Pirithous, and the other Leonteus, peer of murderous Mars. These stood before the gates like two high oak trees upon the mountains, that tower from their wide-spreading roots, and year after year battle with wind and rain. Even so did these two men await the onset of the great Asius confidently and without flinching. The Trojans, led by him and Iamenus, Orestes, Adamas son of Asius, Thune, and Oemanus, raised a loud cry of battle and made straight for the wall, holding their shields of dry oxhide above their heads. For a while the two defenders remained inside and cheered the Achaeans on to stand firm in defense of their ships. When, however, they saw that the Trojans were attacking the wall, while the Danaans were crying out for help and being routed, they rushed outside and fought in front of the gates like two wild boars upon the mountains that abide the attack of men and dogs, and charging on either side break down the wood all round them, tearing it up by the roots, and no one can hear the clattering of their tusks till someone hits them and makes an end of them. Even so did the gleaming bronze rattle about their breasts as the weapons fell upon them, for they fought with great fury, trusting to their own prowess and to those who were on the wall above them. These threw great stones at their assailants in defense of themselves, their tents, and their ships. The stones fell thick as flakes of snow, which some fierce blast drives from the dark clouds and showers down in sheets upon the earth. Even so fell the weapons from the hands alike of Trojans and Achaeans. Helmet and shield rang out as the great stones rained upon them, and Asius, the son of Hercticus, in his dismay cried aloud and smote his two thighs. "Father Jove," he cried, "of a truth you two are altogether given to lying. I made sure the Argive heroes could not withstand us, whereas like slim-wisted wasps or bees that have their nest in the rocks by the wayside, they leave not the holes wherein they have built undefended, but fight for their little ones against all who would take them. Even so these men, though they be but two, will not be driven from the gates, but stand firm either to slay or be slain." He spoke, but moved not the mind of Jove, whose counsel it then was to give glory to Hector. Meanwhile, the rest of the Trojans were fighting about the other gates. I, however, am no god to be able to tell about these things, for the battle raged everywhere about the stone wall as it were a fiery furnace. The Argives, discomfited though they were forced to defend their ships, and all the gods who were defending the Achaeans were vexed in spirit. But the Lapithae kept on fighting with might and main. Thereupon Polypoetes, mighty son of Pirithous, hit Damasus with a spear upon his cheek-pierced helmet. The helmet did not protect him, for the point of the spear went through it and broke the bone, so the brain inside was scattered about, and he died fighting. He then slew Pylon and Ormenus. Leonteus, the race of Mars, killed Hippomachus, the son of Antimachus, by striking him with a spear upon the girdle. He then drew his sword and sprang first upon the Tephates, whom he killed in combat, and who fell face upwards upon the earth. After him he killed Menon, Iamenus, and Orestes, and laid them low one after the other. While they were busy stripping the armor from these heroes, the youths who were led on by Polydamas and Hector, and these were the greater part and the most valiant of those that were trying to break through the wall and fire the ships, were still standing by the trench, uncertain what they should do, for they had seen a sign from heaven when they had essayed to cross it, a soaring eagle that flew skirting to the left wing of their host with a monstrous blood-red snake in its talons, still alive and struggling to escape. The snake was still bent on revenge, wriggling and twisting itself backwards till it struck the bird that held it on the neck and breast, whereupon the bird, being in pain, let it fall, dropping it into the middle of the host, and then flew down the wind with a sharp cry. The Trojans were struck with terror when they saw the snake, portent of aegis-bearing Jove, writhing in the midst of them. And Polydamas went up to Hector and said, "Hector, at our councils of war you are ever given to rebuke me, even when I speak wisely, as though it were not well forsooth that one of the people should cross your will either in the field or at council board. You would have them support you always. Nevertheless, I will say what I think be best. Let us not now go on to fight the Danaans at their ship, for I know what will happen if this soaring eagle which skirted the left wing of our host with a monstrous blood-red snake in its talons, the snake still being alive, was really sent as an omen to the Trojans on their essaying to cross the trench. The eagle let go her hold. She did not succeed in taking it home to her little ones, and so will it be with ourselves. Even though by a mighty effort we break through the gates and wall of the Achaeans, and they give way before us, still we shall not return in good order by the way we came, but shall leave many a man behind us whom the Achaeans will do to death in defence of their ships. Thus would any seer who was expert in these matters and was trusted by the people read the portent. Hector looked fiercely at him and said, Polydamas, I like not of your reading. You can find a better saying than this if you will. If, however, you have spoken in good earnest, then indeed has heaven robbed you of your reason. You would have me pay no heed to the counsels of Jove, nor to the promises he made me, and he bowed his head in confirmation. You bid me be ruled rather by the flight of a wildfowl. What care whether they fly on towards dawn or dark, and whether they be on my right hand or my left? Let us put our trust rather in the counsel of great Jove, king of mortals and immortals. There is one omen and one only, that a man should fight for his country. Why are you so fearful? Though we all be of us slain at the ships of our Argives, you are not likely to be killed yourself, for you are not steadfast nor courageous. If you will not fight, or would talk others over from doing so, you shall fall forthwith before my spear. With these words he led the way, and the others followed after with a cry that rent the air. Then Jove, the lord of thunder, set the blast of a mighty wind from the mountains of Ida, that bore the dust down towards the ships. He thus lulled the Achaeans into security, and gave victory to Hector and to the Trojans, who, trusting their own might and to the signs he had shown them, essayed to break through the great wall of the Achaeans. They tore down the breastworks from the walls and overthrew the battlements. They upheaved the buttresses which the Achaeans had set forth in front of the wall in order to support it. When they had pulled these down, they made sure of breaking through the wall, but the Danaans still showed no sign of giving ground. They still fenced the battlements with their shields of oxhide, and hurled the missiles down upon the foe as soon as any came below the wall. The two Ajaxes went about everywhere on the walls, cheering the Achaeans, giving fair words to some, while they spoke sharply to anyone whom they saw to be remiss. My friends, they cried, Argives one and all, good, bad, indifferent, for there was never fight yet in which we were all of equal prowess. There is now work enough, as you very well know, for all of you. See that you none of you turn in flight towards the ships, daunted by the shouting of the foe, but press forward, and keep one another in heart. If it may so be that Olympian Jove, the lord of lightning, will vouchsafe us to repel our foes, and drive them back towards the city. Thus did the two go about shouting and cheering the Achaeans on, as the flakes that fall thick upon a winter's day, when Jove is minded to snow and to display his arrows to mankind. He lulls the wind to rest, and snows hour after hour till he has buried the tops of high mountains, the headlands that jut into the sea, the grassy plains, and the tilled fields of men. The snow lies deep upon the forelands and havens of the grey sea, but the waves as they come rolling in stay it that it can come no further. Though all else is wrapped as with a mantle, so heavy are the heavens with snow. Even thus thickly did the stones fall on one side and the other, some thrown at the Trojans, and some by the Trojans at the Achaeans, and the whole wall was in an uproar. Still the Trojans and brave Hector would not yet have broken down the gates in the great bar, had not Jove turned his son Sarpedon against the Argives as a lion against a herd of horned cattle. Before him he held a shield of hammered bronze, that the smith had beaten so fair and round it had lined with ox hides, which he had made fast with rivets of gold all round the shield. This he held in front of him, and brandishing his two spears came on like some lion of the wilderness, who had been long famished for want of meat and will dare break even into a well-fenced homestead to try and get at the sheep. He may find the shepherds keeping watch over their flocks with dogs and spears, but he is of no mind to be driven from the fold until he has had a try for it. He will either spring on a sheep and carry it off, or be hit by a spear from some strong hand. Even so was Sarpedon fain to attack the wall and break down its battlements. Then he said to Glaucus, son of Hippolochus, Glaucus, why in Lycia do we receive a special honor as regards our place at the table? Why are the choicest portions served us and our cups kept brimming, and why do men look up to us as though we were gods? Moreover, we hold a large estate by the banks of the river Xanthith, fair with orchard lawns and wheat-growing land. It becomes us, therefore, to take our stand at the head of all the Lycians to bear the brunt of the fight, that they may say one to another, Our princes and Lycia eat the fat of the land and drink best of wine, but they are fine fellows. They fight well and are ever at the front in this battle. My good friend, if, when we were once out of this fight, we could escape old age and death's forward and forever, I should neither press forward myself nor bid you do so. But death in 10,000 shapes hangs ever over our heads, and no man can elude him. Therefore, let us go forward, and either win glory for ourselves, or yield it to another. Glaucus heeded his saying, and the pair forthwith led on the host of Lycians. Menestheus, son of Peteos, was dismayed when he saw them, for it was against his part of the wall that they came, bringing destruction with them. He looked along the wall for some chieftain to support his comrades, and saw the two Ajaxes, men ever eager for the fray, and Teucer, who had just come from his tent, standing near them. But he could not make his voice heard by shouting to them. So great an uproar was there from the crashing shields and helmet and the battering of gates with a din which reached the skies. For all the gates had been closed, and the Trojans were hammering at them to try and break their way through them. Menestheus therefore sent Theudas with a message to Ajax. Run, good Theudas, he said, and call Ajax, or better still bid both come, for it will be all over with us here directly. The leaders of the Lycians are upon us, men who have ever fought desperately heretofore. But if they have too much on their hands to let them come, at any rate let Ajax son of Telamon do so, and let Teucer the famous bowman come with him. The messenger did as he was told, and set off running along the wall of the Achaeans. When he reached the Ajaxes, he said to them, Sirs, princes of Argives, the son of noble Peteos bids you come to him for a while and help him. You had better both come if you can, or it will be all over with him directly. The leaders of the Lycians are upon him, men who have ever fought desperately heretofore. If you have too much on your hands to let both come, at any rate let Ajax son of Telamon do so, and let Teucer the famous bowman come with him. Great Ajax, son of Telamon, heeded the message, and at once spoke to the son of Oileus. Ajax, he said, do you two yourself and brave Lycomedes stay here, and keep the Danaans in heart to fight their hardest. I will go over yonder and bear my part in the fray, but I will come back here at once as soon as I have given them the help they need. With this, Ajax, son of Telamon, set off, and Teucer, his brother by the same father, went also, with Pandion to carry Teucer's bow. They went along inside the wall, and when they came to the tower where Menestheus was, and hard-pressed indeed did they find him, the brave captains and leaders of the Lycians were storming the battlements as it were a thick dark cloud, fighting in close quarters and raising the battle cry aloud. First, Ajax son of Telamon killed brave Epicles, a comrade of Sarpedon, hitting him with a jagged stone that lay by the battlements at the very top of the wall. As men now are, even one who is in the bloom of youth could hardly lift it with his two hands, but Ajax raised it high aloft and flung it down, smashing Epicles' four-crested helmet, so that the bones of his head were crushed to pieces, and he fell from the high wall as though he were diving, with no more life left in him. Then Teucer wounded Glaucus, the brave son of Hippolochus, as he was coming on to attack the wall. He saw his shoulder bare and aimed an arrow at it, which made Glaucus leave off fighting. Thereon he sprang covertly down for fear some of the Achaeans might see that he was wounded and taunt him. Sarpedon was stung with grief when he saw Glaucus leave him. Still he did not leave off fighting, but aimed his spear at Alcmon, son of Thestor, and hit him. He drew his spear back again, and Alcmon came down headlong after, with his bronzed armor rattling round him. Then Sarpedon seized the battlement in his strong hands and tugged at it until it gave way altogether, and a breach was made through which many men might pass. Ajax and Teucer then both of them attacked him. Teucer hit him with an arrow on the band that bore the shield which covered his body, but Jove saved his son from destruction, that he might not fall by the ship's sterns. Meanwhile Ajax sprang on him and pierced his shield, but the spear did not go clean through, though it hustled him back that he could come on no further. He therefore retired a little space from the battlement, yet without losing his ground, for he still thought to cover himself with glory. Then he turned round and shouted to the brave Lycians, saying, Lycians, why do you thus fail me? For all my prowess, I cannot break through the wall and open a way to the ship single-handed. Come close on behind me, for the more there are of us, the better. The Lycians, shamed by his rebuke, pressed close around him who was their counselor and their king. The Argives on their part got their men in fighting order within the wall, and there was a deadly struggle between them. The Lycians could not break through the wall and force their way to the ships, nor could the Danaans drive the Lycians from the wall now once they had reached it. As two men, measuring rods and hads, quarrel about their boundaries in a field that they own in common, and stickle for their rights though they be but in a mere strip, even so did the battlements now serve as a bone of contention, and they beat one another's round shields for their possession. Many a man's body was wounded with the pitiless bronze as he turned round and barred his back to the foe, and many were struck clean through their shields, and the wall and the battlements were everywhere deluged with the blood alike of Trojans and of Achaeans. But even so, the Trojans could not rout the Achaeans, who still held on, and as some honest hard-working woman weighs wool in her balance and sees that the scales be true, for she would gain some pitiful earnings for her little ones, even so was the fight balanced evenly between them, till the time came when Jove gave the greater glory to Hector's son of Priam, who was first to spring towards the wall of the Achaeans. When he had done so, he cried aloud to the Trojans, "Up, Trojans, break the wall of the Argives, and fling a fire upon their ships." Thus did he hound them on, and in one body they rushed straight at the wall as he had bidden them, and scaled the battlements with sharp spears in their hands. Hector lay hold of a stone that lay just outside the gates, and was thick at one end but pointed at the other. Two of the best men in the town, as men now are, could hardly raise it from the ground and put it onto a wagon, but Hector lifted it quite easily by himself, for the son of scheming Saturn made it light for him. As a shepherd picks up a ram's fleece with one hand and finds it no burden, so easily did Hector lift the great stone and drive it right at the doors that closed the gates so strong and so firmly set. These doors were double and high. They were kept closed by two crossbars to which there was but one key. When he had got close up to them, Hector strode towards them that his blow might gain in force, and struck them in the middle, leaning his whole weight against them. He broke both hinges, and the stone fell inside by reason of its great weight. The portals re-echoed with the sound, and the bars held no longer, and the doors flew open, one way, and the other through the force of the blow. Then brave Hector leaped inside with a face as dark as that of flying night. The gleaming bronze flashed fiercely about his body, and he had two spears in his hand. None but a god could have withstood him as he flung himself into the gateway, and his eyes glared like fire. Then he turned round towards the Trojans and called them on to scale the wall, and he did as they bade him. Some of them at once climbing over the wall, while others passed through the gates. The Danaans then fled panic-stricken towards their ships, and all was uproar and confusion. End of Book 12. Recording by M.L. Cohen, Cleveland, Ohio, www.mojomove411.com.